Okay, it's 5 o'clock on Monday, April 18th, 2022. Goldsboro City Council work session is called to order. At this time, I would ask the roll be called by the clerk. By the way, we have two absences tonight. Councilwoman Jones is by remote, and Councilman Pollock has an excused absence.
Mayor Ham,
Here.
Councilmember Broadway,
Yes.
Councilwoman Matthews, Councilman Gaylor, Councilman Aycock.
Here. Okay, we have a quorum, and next item on the agenda is the...
Excuse me, I didn't hear you call my name.
I'm
I
sorry.
apologize. Councilwoman Jones,
Present.
Thank
state
you,
your name,
Councilwoman
please.
Jones. Okay, the next item is adoption of... Mayor. Sorry.
Councilwoman Jones, can you state your name, please?
Hiawatha Jones, Councilwoman Hiawatha Jones.
Thank you.
Okay. So adoption of the agenda is next on the item. Is there a motion to, is there any change?
Mayor Ham, Hiawatha Jones. Mayor Ham, I would like to remove under the consent agenda K and place it under items requiring individual attention. I would like to discuss it.
Which item is that again, please?
I would like to remove K,
K, okay.
item K, under the consent agenda.
Okay,
I would like to remove it.
got it.
That's 209 and 213 North Georgia Avenue, right, ma'am?
Yes.
Okay, Councilmember Jones would like to move item K on the consent agenda, from the consent agenda down to items requiring individual action. Is there any other changes anyone wants to offer? If not, we'll have a motion to adopt the agenda with the amended change.
So moved.
Second. Motion's been made and second. Madam, is there any discussion? Madam Clerk, call the roll, please.
Mayor Ham,
Yes.
Councilwoman Jones,
Present.
state your name, please.
Hiawatha Jones, present.
Thank you. Councilman Broadway,
Yes.
Councilwoman Matthews. Yes. Councilman Gaylor,
Yes.
Councilman Aycock.
Yes.
Councilwoman Jones, is your comment present mean that you approve the change?
Yes, yeah.
Thank you. Okay, we'll go into the old business. First item under old business is the 309 Walnut Street sewer issue. Mr. Lilly, you're present. Want to come forward and speak?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor and City Council. We're back again to talk about this. We delayed this so we could find more information out about the issue. I personally found out a lot of information as well, and I'd like to share that with you this evening. I'd first like to talk about the economic standpoint of this particular issue. That street right there, that line services 4 properties, one of them being a multifamily apartment building. As a licensed real estate agent, I was able to perform broker price opinions to find the probable sale prices of those properties, and cumulatively it's in excess of $1 million. So this affects over $1 million in residential property. I'd also like to discuss the revenue that we briefly talked about last time, so I'm not going to harp on it. Each one of those residents brings in about $2,000 annually just in revenue into the downtown area, just spending money going out to eat, buying clothes or whatever, just spending money downtown. Additionally, there's a major housing shortage, and I don't think that's unknown to anyone. So if we do have to displace these people, I have no idea where they're going to go, but they're more than likely not going to be able to stay in the Goldsboro downtown area. Which means that we're losing that revenue from each individual person, that $2,000 a year, and there's currently over a dozen that live on that street, with plans for many more once we can get these properties rehabilitated to their original grandeur, if you will, because they are beautiful properties. There's also the historic value, the intrinsic value. It's hard to put a monetary value on the historic presence of a property. However, the city obviously sees some value in historic properties because we've established a historic district and we have a historic district commission. One of those properties is actually considered historically significant and listed in the historic architectural inventory of Goldsboro, and I have that with me if you'd like to view it. Also, my personal property that I have on there was built in 1905, and it's a Victorian-style home, and I've spent a significant amount of money trying to rehabilitate that property to its former glory. So we have a lot of money that is private money that is going into these properties, and I feel personally like that money was spent by me and these other investors, and it was an investment for me originally. When I purchased the home, I lived in the home and rehabbed it myself with a lot of YouTube videos, right? So I have a lot of sweat equity into this community as well. Now that we've talked a little bit about the economics behind it, it seems pretty straightforward that at a maximum $75,000 is estimated by our Public Works Director, that it seems like a very sound investment to make. Not to mention just the quality of living for those individuals there right now. I'd also like to talk about private remediation. So it was suggested to me that we get with all the property owners and try to figure out some sort of private remediation, like a private agreement between all of us. And it's just simply not feasible. How do we determine who pays what value, or how do we determine who pays what portion of that? The property next to, if you're looking directly at my property, the property left of mine is it was originally a single family residence that was converted into 3 apartments. So are they responsible for 3 portions of that share, or are they responsible for 1 portion because it's the same size property? And then, once we get into the finances of it, I have to take somebody to court and sue them every single time there's an issue if they refuse to pay. And quite frankly, I don't want a privately maintained line that's servicing an apartment building running across my yard. It creates a lot of liability for me if there is a failure, and for all those downhill for me as well. The point of contention last time I was here was whether or not the city owns it, right? I mean, that was the big discussion that we were having and trying to determine. So in that package that I handed out to you, there's very first page is an email between the City of Goldsboro engineer technician, Stan Smith, and you actually have this map from 1928, and I know it's really, really small, so I went ahead and on the 4th page, I actually blew it up so you can actually see Walnut Street specifically. And on Walnut Street, you can see in 1928, this sewer line is there. It's on the city map. And not only is it on the city map, but it has a manhole, and you can see in the email from the city engineer that the manhole was installed. So if the argument is that Mr. Borden installed this and cut corners, well then who installed the manhole to service this line? It doesn't make any sense to install a pipe that's 2 inches smaller and then spend extra money to install a manhole. I mean, it's not feasible. It doesn't make any sense. So my argument would be that based on these 2 documents and the lack of any documentation stating the contrary, the city owns the line. And whether or not they would like to continue and replace the line behind the properties or install a new one in front of the properties, I believe it's their responsibility to do so. On the very last page is the current map that the city engineer was kind enough to provide to me. And you can see that for some reason Walnut Street is the only street there that doesn't have sewage. So why, I don't know. I don't know if it was an oversight at some point, but you can't Another option that I considered, I was trying to think from the city standpoint, okay, well, how can the city remediate this issue most efficiently? And I was thinking about how sometimes special assessments are introduced to get property owners to pay for their fair share. Well, in this case, a special assessment doesn't make any sense because none of the other neighboring streets had to pay a special assessment. So why is this street neglected and all the surrounding streets have access to public sewage? I don't understand where that disconnect happened. We spent a lot of money, and I say we because I was a part of this development downtown. When I purchased that property, there was one resident on the street. There was a single resident, and there was a group home that got shut down many times diagonal from me for illegal activities. I'll never forget the first time that I rolled up and I had my uniform on, and I had a man ask me if I was lonely, and he was propositioning me for a prostitute. That was my first experience downtown, right? And we've come a long ways. We've turned this place where it was scary to go out at night into this beautiful downtown area that you can't find parking, during holidays, during weekends when it's nice out. But what we've done is we've turned this old beater car into a Ferrari, but we didn't put an engine in it, right? So we have this beautiful downtown that it's great to come and look at, but it's not functional without basic infrastructure, right? So now you have these historically significant properties that become functionally obsolete without basic access to utilities such as sewage. I'm not originally from here. I was sold on Goldsboro. I'm a veteran. I decided to make this place my home based on the promises that the city sold me. I mean, they came down with this master development plan, and it looked absolutely incredible. And we've done about a quarter of it, and 25% of it has completely changed the way that Goldsboro is today. And I would like to continue to be a part of that growth. I would like to continue to invest in this downtown area. I want to take on these challenges, these historic houses that are on the demolition list. I want to save those properties. I do believe that there's a lot of value in those properties, but I can't do it if we can't provide basic services such as sewage. That's all I have. If you guys have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Anyone have a question?
My question isn't necessarily for Zach. As I see it, there's two issues. One, if the city owns it or not, and then of course the maintenance that self-resolves this isolated issue if the city owns it, if it's the city's thing, whether we realize it or not. The second issue is if we don't own it, what could a policy level decision be for allowing these sorts of situations to be remedied? And so with this one, I've asked for a policy that we can discuss at a later date or whenever that's able to be developed, to be able to look at situations like this around the city and other development as it comes to the city as well. I'd be curious to see what Rick has, what his response is and things like that. Those are my main two questions.
Any other questions? Mr. Salmon, you have a comment?
Yes, sir. So, in talking to the Public Works Director, the City Attorney, myself, we don't think it's a city responsibility. We just, the fact that there's a 4-inch line there versus a 6-inch line, whatever was in writing before, whatever on the map there, doesn't necessarily make it a city responsibility. So, for us to go in and do that work.
Our attorney has spoken as well.
I think I spoke a little bit last time, but the fact of the case is an easement was granted by Mr. Lilly to the city, but the easement is a right to use, a right of access. It's not an ownership. It is right to use or access someone else's property. So Mr. Lilly gave the city an easement to take a look at his sewer problems back in 2017. And he was having problems with it. The city went out and looked at it. Rick can elaborate on this. But when they went through the pipes to take a look and see where the problem was, they determined it was on the neighbor's property. At that point, Mr. Lilly was advised to secure the right from his neighbors to allow him to go on the property and have the repairs that would be done if they weren't going to do them. My understanding from talking to Rick, and Mr. Lilly can correct me or Mr. Fletcher can, is that the neighbor to, if you're facing the front of Mr. Lilly's property, the neighbor to the left is the property we're talking about going across. That property owner has his own separate access to the sewer system, is my understanding. So Mr. Lilly, the line he's got going straight across, I believe is just for him. I'm not sure what the apartments are doing at this point. The way the map shows it from about Mr. Lilly's property line across. Part of the 1922 issue was as well that Mr. Borden was going to secure easements from the other property owners. I'm not aware of any of those that were secured. They could have been. I'm not going back to the stacks over in the courthouse to look through 1922 deeds or easements from 100 years ago. That's not something you can access online. But nonetheless, whether or not there's an easement that's there that he got would have been gotten for him, Mr. Borden, not for the city.
Right.
All right. But there not being a record of that, you don't know whether that condition was actually met or not. The fact that it's a 4-inch line rather than 6 may indicate maybe that did not take place because the 6-inch line wasn't put in, which was part of that was discussed in 1922. So to answer Mr. Geller's questions, number one, the city does not own it. Number two, I think under the circumstances, the city can decide how they want to approach it, given there was a decision back in 1922 by that council that said, we're willing to try to take on this project to help out this guy because he's going to build an apartment house. At this point in time, I think you make a decision, but if you make one concerning Mr. Lilly's property, my only recommendation is you be prepared to apply that to everybody else that comes up here with an issue. You got to treat everybody fairly. If you don't treat everybody fairly, you have a due process problem being a governmental entity. So you have potential constitutional claims by somebody saying, well, look, he gave y'all an easement, and now you're taking care of all his sewer problems. So now you got to take care of my sewer problems because guess what? I'm going to go draw me an easement and give you one too.
And Ron, in response to that, I want to be very clear. I'm not looking to take care of one individual property owner.
I understand.
What I would be interested in doing is seeing a policy that would allow adjoining, or at least neighboring properties to petition the city to put in a line and then pay for it over some period of time through special assessments. So that would be an easier access for each of them. So you're taking care of multiple properties, not an individual property.
Well, I think if you're going to do that, you're going to have to go down Walnut Street, and then you're going to have to put in the access down Walnut, just like it is. There's one block, obviously, that has it, which I think is between George and, is that John? I get the names mixed up. But then between George and maybe Virginia, and then the next street, Carolina Street, there's not that in front of those 2 blocks. So, you know, you're looking at going in and putting that out front. So that way those owners could then tie in, which again is typical requirement. We run it, the city has the sewer lines in the street, and if you want to connect to it, it's your expense to connect to it. But then they have direct access. This is a unique situation where Mr. Lilly's property does not have direct access. He does have to access it across his neighbor's property, which purportedly was the whole purpose of all this taking place in 1922.
Right.
So it is a unique situation in and of itself. It's different than most. You take a look at the map you pointed out, you have 2 blocks, essentially, maybe 3. There's one other one that's just one short block, but it appears the properties, none are just facing that next street.
Right.
If you've got the map in
Right.
front of you, you can
Yeah,
see that
I'm looking
one.
at it now.
And so, you know, you have 2 other sections of 2 blocks, not only Walnut, I think maybe both of them are on Walnut Street. As to why the city didn't do
Right.
that, who knows?
Is largely irrelevant at this particular point, and not to take over the conversation, but I appreciate y'all humoring me for a few minutes. If each of the property owners grant easements to run up the back of their property lines where the existing line, and I'm operating under an assumption here that what began as a private line to service one apartment building has been tapped into multiple times unintentionally, unknowingly in some situations. That is my assumption. Now, if I'm wrong on that, and that line servicing Borden Apartments is actually its own thing, and that is not what is servicing these other properties unintentionally, then I need to be corrected.
Mr. Fletcher can probably enlighten you on that
Okay.
issue.
We didn't see any other taps to the main. We didn't see any other taps, just that one tap other than the gentleman at the very end. If you're looking at Mr. Lilly's property,
Right.
the house, neighboring house with the one on the corner, he has his own tap going to our main. We didn't see any other when we cambered the line. It's just the one line coming into it, that 4. So we're assuming if they have sewer, that
They
they're all.
probably tapped into
they're
what
all-
once was a private line,
They probably
assuming
have a sweep, yeah, you can't really tap into it before they have a sweep or
Right.
something going into it.
either way, it's multiple properties, one of them being, yeah.
Is the apartment still
And
connected to
the
it?
apartment complex was built after, it was like, when?
Yeah.
So does the apartment complex connect to the same line that Mr. Lilly's on or not?
That line services Mr. Lilly, and the one next door to his right is and the department, as far as we know, we haven't cambered all the way up, but there are no other taps in our system, the sewer's going somewhere.
Right.
My yard, where it's going.
It very well may be if it's plugged up, but to the best of our knowledge, there are no other taps in our main. And if they're being serviced, then process of elimination, you would assume
Right.
that they're all.
So something happened somewhere along the line where the chronological line, not the physical line. I guess both in this situation, where that what was intended, at least setting aside the minutes here, setting aside those other things, let's presume what was in the minutes didn't happen, and it truly remained a private, board and installation. At some point, it started servicing a bunch of other landowners and a bunch of other folks that are paying for sewer.
It's private, they could have done what they wanted to, it's private citizens alike, it's not maintained by the city, they could have tapped into it at any point. It could have been a septic system there originally and it went bad, so they tapped into the that was coming behind the property.
That's
It's
fair.
just a bunch of assumptions.
That's fair.
For some period of time, you see, you could argue by law, Mr. Lilly has acquired an easement to go across his neighbor's
Sure.
land because of that sewer line issue, but that doesn't create an obligation on the city because of that. It
No.
gives Mr. Lilly the right to then go in and argue and say, okay, neighbor, I'm gonna come in and I'm gonna come in and do some work because my sewer's not working right or it's clogged up, whatever the
Right.
issue may be. And the neighbor says, well, I don't want you over here on my land doing this, you can't go into my land and do it. And your argument is, well, yeah, I can, I've got an easement by operation of law because of all the years I've used this.
Right.
It's been
Right.
allowed to be used, doesn't give him unfettered,
Sure,
use of it,
it's
but it gives him the
limited.
right to use and enjoyment of that particular easement. I asked Mr. Lilly, I think after the last meeting, if he had spoken to his neighbor, and he had told me he had not. So to me, that's first place I would start is talk to the neighbor, say, look, I'm having some issues, can I get the plumber or somebody to come take a look and see why the pipe's blocked, whether it's tree roots or something else, and if it is, can we just bore those out? I don't understand why that conversation is not taking place, but that's a practical discussion. That's
Right.
Mr. Lilly, that's up to him, it's his piece of property.
Have you had that conversation since?
No, ma'am. So one of the property owners, the one who owns the apartment complex and the building next, or the small house next door, they're not local. It's a property management firm out of Raleigh, and the person that owns it is actually not even a U.S. citizen that I'm aware of. I know that he travels internationally. So trying to get up with him is going to be next to impossible. But I'm not in the business of providing basic infrastructure to the citizens of Goldsboro. That's the city's job, right? So even if I obtain an easement, what's that apartment building going to do? And what's that other house next door going to do? It's just simply not feasible. I'd also, Mr. Lawrence, I'd like to make just one correction. I didn't bring up an easement today because it wasn't a point of contention last time. The reason that easement was recorded is because Mr. Fletcher, and we discussed this already, in an email said, hey, get your easement recorded and we'll schedule the repair. I held up my end of the deal and the city did not, right? So the next step after this is probably going to be, as I stated last time, is I'm not going to allow it. I'm not going to allow an apartment building to run their sewage line across my yard. I'm not going to have these issues ever again. If this is a private line, I'll install my own private line, and they're going to have to fight with you guys later, right? And the same thing for that house to the right. They're going to have to figure out how to tie into that. Another comment that Mr. Lawrence made is that you got to treat everybody equally, right? Walnut Street is the only street on that map provided by the engineer that doesn't have a main to tie into. So how come the people on Walnut Street are not treated the same as the neighboring streets? If you're going to treat everybody equally, then treat them all equally and provide them access to basic utilities, right? Like I said, you spent millions of dollars putting in a fancy brick sidewalk, but didn't have the oversight to put in basic sewage, right? So that doesn't make a lot of sense. And then we also talk about how, he talked about how he hasn't gone through this stack from 1922, and it's incredibly naive to think that a document can't get lost after 100 years, right? I provided you with 2 documents that show that it's a city line. Nobody else is providing any documentation stating the otherwise, right? We have a different size line. That's the point of contention. However, on the engineer provided map from 1928, which is years later, right? So we have this on the city's map as a city line with a manhole. So if you think Mr. Borden cut a corner and used a smaller line and then installed a manhole, that makes no sense. It doesn't make any logical sense for somebody to cut costs, pennies, right? Say pennies, and then spend a ton of money installing a manhole. It just doesn't make logical sense. like I said, it's a Ferrari without an engine. It doesn't make any logical sense that it would be a privately owned line with a manhole. You know,
Mr. Fletcher, do you have anything you say?
I do.
Could
We
you
have
come
several,
up front, please?
we actually have a few other streets that don't have sewer, directly on that particular street. You have to go to branching streets to get sewer access. There's access, it's just on the, we're talking about George and, Virginia. There's access there. And the map, the fact that it's on the map, we have a lot of stuff on our city maps, our GIS overlays. I just pulled up a few real quick. West Grantham Street, that's a private line. It's a forest main. In fact, there was an SSO there about 3 years ago, and the private owner had to deal with that, not the city. It's on our maps. We have a vested interest in what comes into our sewer system. So just putting a private line on our maps helps us troubleshoot. When we're troubleshooting, have to plug a line while we're working on it, see who's going to be impacted by the repairs. So we do have several dozen probably lines that are private that are reflected on our GIS overlays today, currently. So just because it's on a map doesn't make it ours to maintain. I'm trying to think what the other point of contention was. It slips me right now, but
While you're thinking about it, Mr. Fletcher, so I don't know if this conversation is really helping or hurting me right now, but this map from 1928 that shows this particular area in question, as well as the city's lines. Have you seen
I've
this?
seen that.
So that's what this is, right? So these lines that are doing this
They're
are
sewer
what,
lines.
sewer lines?
That's correct.
So the line in question is on this map, right?
Virginia, he could tie into Virginia. Right now they're tied into Virginia Street. He's tied into Virginia from that line going behind the 4 properties.
Yeah, can you do mind? I'm sorry. I'm saying this is the line that he's talking about, right? But
Wow,
what
I
I'm
need
saying
to blow
is,
that up.
okay, he blew it up for us. Mr. Lilly, you blew up the map in question, right? That would say that the line that you're talking about is a city line, right?
yes, ma'am.
Show that to me, please.
It's this line right here, ma'am, that ties into Virginia Street.
Does everybody see that? Everybody see that?
Yeah.
The
Because,
point I was making was that we have dozens and dozens of private lines showing
Yeah.
that reflect on maps just like that on our GIS overlay. Doesn't make them, they're not ours to maintain, they're private lines, but we still put them on our maps.
Okay, I see what
When
you're
we go
saying.
work on our infrastructure, if we're gonna affect other property owners, it's nice to know what's coming into our system. It all comes to us, so to know where it's originating from helps us troubleshoot and determine what we need to do to do the repairs. So just
okay.
because it's on the map.
Okay, so what I was hearing originally was, it's our map, it's our line. And then what you're saying
No,
is,
ma'am.
it's our map, it doesn't have to be our line. And it kind of seems like I'm
We-
just hearing a lot of yes, no,
We-
maybe so.
We put a lot of private lines on our maps.
Okay.
At Central Heights, it's a trailer park and apartment complex out there. There are private stormwater, water, and sewer maps on that, but they're reflected on our city maps, our GIS overlays. It helps us, like I said, troubleshoot and maintain. We need to know what's coming to us so we know how to react and do the repairs.
Rick, have you by any chance had time to take a look at any of the other city policies and possibly draft something that we could take a look at in the coming weeks here?
For something similar to what we do for our streets, or what where we actually
effectively annexation of sewer lines to be able to, you know, resolve these sorts of situations.
bring them
in
up to
policy.
code, then we take them over, but the resident pays for what it
Right.
costs to bring them up to code.
Right.
I haven't looked personally. I know that they do exist for other things. I just did it in my neighborhood with DOT. They wouldn't take over our roads until we brought them to code. We do it with our streets, I think, here too.
If you
A couple of
bring,
weeks ago, we had a conversation. I sent a couple of different versions to the city manager, and I believe you were also on that email chain. I really would like to talk about this at a policy level as well, just to avoid these things avoid personal things coming to council, because then and no matter how it works out, it's going to reek of favoritism, or it's going to reek of they don't like this person or they do like that person. There needs to be a policy level thing that can remedy these things in the future. So, whichever direction that is, and if it's taking over what is effectively a shared private line that no one really knows who originally did it, that we can look at taking that line on doing special assessments over a certain number of years
And
in
they're-
a reasonable way.
Man, there shouldn't be any shared private lines. We don't even allow it now. And I can only think of one other instance where we had a resident that had tied in to a common tap, and there was an issue with it getting stopped up. The one resident called the plumber, fixed it. Well, it got stopped up a while later, and he said, "It's your turn." He said, "I'm not doing it. I don't care." And so he just cut it, and the other guy had to make a new tap. We don't allow it just for that reason.
And that's effectively where we are now.
And
with
it's
this one.
right, and like I said, this is the second time for me. So fortunately, it's not
Good.
a big problem.
That's good.
We don't allow it. Haven't
Yeah.
allowed it for a while.
So how do we fix this issue? Because I mean,
They
while
all
I do agree, we do
ideally-
need something in place, but like,
We still gotta resolve
right
this
now,
one.
how do we resolve this issue right now?
It's a private matter. It's a private issue. It's not my place to make recommendations or suggestions here for Mr. Lilly, but if it were mine, I would probably make the first attempt to try to unclog the line. As simple as that. Have a plumber come in, work with the neighbor to the left. He talked about the two neighbors to the right of his property, but not the actual property that has the clog. The backed up portion of his line is on his neighbor to the left. He is a local resident, older gentleman. Contact him and see if he can just have it, run a roto-rooter through or something and try to get it unplugged. It may be as simple as that, and then it won't be an issue after that. But that's not my place to decide to do that. So.
Ms. Jones, do you have any question you want to ask?
No, I do not. Not at this time. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So, the opinion of our manager, our attorney, is that the city has no responsibility for the maintenance of this line. Mr. Lawrence, do we need a formal decision by the council on that?
I mean, I don't think you need a formal decision unless you wanted to go back and address the 1922 thing that was done. But essentially, it's a policy question. It's a question that was brought to council's attention because it was brought to staff. Staff had said, no, we're not responsible for it. And then the party involved, Mr. Lilly, said, oh, well, okay, I want to talk to somebody else about this.
Okay.
Over and above the
So-
department head level. So that's why it was brought to you guys for consideration. If you wanted to do something that you directed the staff to do it, then that's your option.
Okay. So we have an opinion based on comments that's been discussed. If there's no further discussion on this, we'll move to the next
I have
item.
one
Yes, sir.
question. Mr. Fletcher, if Mr. Lilly does get permission from the owner that lives on his left, where there's a blockage, to clean it, will we as the city go in and do that for them? Use our jet vac and,
If you direct me to, I mean,
Well, I think
it's just there's a liability there. We'll go into it. Understand there's a liability concern there. If we go in and try to bore that out, jet rod it out, and it blows the line out or something, who's responsible for doing the repairs at that point? That's the only thing I would bring to your attention. I don't have a problem. We actually rotted up to that point, but we didn't go any further because we were afraid if we put too much force on it, it may bust the line. Terracotta, but it was in good shape from what we saw. It's just from that point on, who owns it after that? And typically when we do anything like that, you break it, you bought it kind of mindset. So we'll help residents as much as we can up to the point where we think we're going to incur cost, and we stop and tell them what our recommendation is as far as getting a local plumber to try to take care of it. So, but we'll do whatever you want. And we're here at your beck and call.
Mr. Gaylor, I'm sorry, I don't have anything. On the reference your suggestion of a policy, I think we can look at that at a future point.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. Okay, we'll move to the next item then. Item B is the nonprofit support process. At the last meeting, the council voted to assume responsibility to select, vet, and appropriate monies to requesting nonprofit organizations. I said then that there were two things that I felt that we needed to do beforehand, and that was to, one, have a process, and number two, to know how much money we were going to be able to allocate. A process document was prepared and sent to the council by the manager in his weekly update. I hope, I'm not going to ask for a vote on this tonight, but I hope that you've had an opportunity to look at it. If you want to make any comment about it, feel free, but we have two council members, one who is physically not, well, both are physically not here, but one is not here, nor can he speak, and the other one is not here physically, but I would propose that if you want to make any comment about it at this time, fine, but we postpone voting on this process until the next meeting. And the second item is on funding. Our finance director, manager, and departments are working on their budget, and they will come back and give us an idea of what monies we may have available to adopt as a fee, not a fee, but a amount of monies that can be allocated. So I'll entertain any comment that you might have about the draft policy.
Mayor Ham, this is Hiawatha Jones, District 1. There were two things that I wanted the council to look at and check it out with me to see if I am on the right page. I want to thank you so much for putting this together. I really do appreciate you for doing that. Under where it says, it's under general, and it says, we will adhere to the highest ethical standards in all endeavors. I want to ask the council, would we take a look at specifying some of those ethical standards so that it will be clear what they are? And the next concern was measurable is my thing. And under policy, it says regular come together for the purposes of promoting and providing or supporting services. And I would ask the council if we would specify what regular means. Regular meeting with the board every 6 months or every 3 months, if we could look at that. And if I am on the right page, if you agree or disagree with me on those two things.
Let me just speak to the second item where it says regularly come together for the purpose of promoting, providing, or supporting services. That is directed to the agency, not to the council.
I know that, but I'm saying the nonprofit people, whenever they meet, you know, what does regular mean? Does that mean if I have Storm David nonprofit, what is regular for me? Do I meet 3 times a week or 2 times a year, or what does that mean?
Councilwoman Jones, I think, Mayor Ham, each nonprofit in their bylaws has a set time in which they meet their board of directors, and then, you know, if it's an organization, let's think about it like this: it's an organization that is not required to meet. Like if it's an organization that offers a service and their service hours is Monday through Friday, so it's kind of hard to gauge. I understand what you're saying, but I think it's hard to gauge, and I think it's left upon just the service in which they provide and then what was outlined in their individual bylaws, which I think would be really kind of hard for us to follow.
Okay, I understand what you're saying. Each organization has the constitutional bylaws and that they go by. So now if this organization does not have that in it, how do we handle that?
I think it's required, right? Somebody that's got a little bit more nonprofit experience. It's required to submit that, to include your bylaws, your board of directors, what that looks like. That's required before you can get that confirmation or something. So I think that's kind of
I want to make sure that we as a council don't get caught up in something that we don't need to get caught up in. Thank you.
Ms. Jones, if you go to the pre-qualification checklist, item number 3 under that says, as part of the pre-qualification, it says maintains a responsible volunteer board of directors that meets regularly and effectively governs. So again, this policy doesn't state the number of times you meet being regularly, but
Okay.
as Ms. Matthews spoke, the bylaws often state when the board meets.
Okay, all right.
Anything else, ma'am?
I did want to talk about the ethical standards. So I know some nonprofits have ethical standards. So is this the same situation?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Anyone else have any comments?
My biggest thing was the under policy, and I hope we're all looking at this together. Eligible organizations must have an active 501c3 designation for a minimum of 3 years. Now, here we are being exclusive, in my opinion, because there are some organizations. Now, mind you, before this year, we only offered this funding to a particular group of organizations. Last year, I made the suggestion that we open it up to the public, right? So there are organizations that are newer and that they are under 3 years. And there are 3 organizations on this list that are not 3 years old yet. But in doing some research and talking to these organizations and some of their board members and even getting documentation and even attending some of their events, they have done more in their 9 months of conception that some of these organizations have done in their entire existence. And I think that we should not limit, because that's 3 organizations that are automatically out of the running. 3 organizations, one that focuses on healthy birthing. There is a major disparity when we look at infant mortality when it comes to African American women. And this organization helps to provide healthier birthing options and support during that process. Another organization works on reducing recidivism with youth and adults. The other organization provides clothing and foods even for some of our veterans here in our area. And those 3 organizations are automatically going to be cut simply because they don't meet this 3-year requirement. And I really want us to eliminate that completely. And a lot of these pre-qualification checklists, those organizations that are new are not going to have. And it goes back to that comment that someone made about it being, I created a 10 list criteria because I didn't know that someone else was going to do this for us. I thought that since we assumed responsibility that we would kind of orchestrate that, but nonetheless, out of all these 10 things, none of them speak to how long they've been in existence. Because what I do know is we tell these organizations to go get this status, this 501c3 status, because it's going to help you get funding. And then they go get the status in hopes of getting funding, and they can't because you have these type of requirements. So it doesn't seem like we're really helping them, and then we're opening it up, but yet we've closed it right back to those same organizations that have always been on our scope if we implement this 3-year rule. I think we need to focus on revenue. We all received that letter last year when we decided to cut one organization's funding and give that money to another organization. And then we got a letter, all of us got it, and it was like, whoo, have you seen how much that they pocketed that year? And we have to consider that because some of these organizations are not generating revenue. And yet they're doing a lot for our residents. And I really hope that we support some of those organizations and remove that 3-year requirement to help them.
Any other comment?
My only comment is we should be able to see some outcomes and some idea of what that organization has done more than a year or some year. That organization needs to show some kind of outcome. If you don't have an outcome and it's just a good idea, and I'm not doubting that it's what the good work they want to do. I'm not doubting it. But we've got organizations on there that are providing drugs for people. We've got organizations providing teachers in schools who have been doing it for years. And I can name some of those. And you talk about wages, you talk about the crisis center. You talk about all of the people that, the watch program. Look what the watch program, with over $2 billion worth of free drugs to people who don't qualify for any kind. And they can show outcomes. And that's all I ask, is show some outcomes. Not just a good idea that might work. And that's my idea.
Well, I want to encourage you to do a little research, because that's what I did, and that's how I was able to find the outcomes that you so passionately speak of. I mean, with Passionate Beginnings, we're right here. They've actually done more work, but they just got their 501c3, so they've been doing work for the past 3 years. And in this past year, they've already serviced close to 70 women. That's outcomes. That's outcomes. That's consultations. That's services that have been provided to 70 women within this last year. That is outcomes. Another outcome is one of our young men in one of these organizations being able to partner in a summer youth employment program this year. It was because of him being in that program that he was offered that opportunity. That's outcomes. So all you have to do is do a little research and just be a little bit in tune into what's happening in the city, and you can see some of these outcomes. They're not hard to find. But we have to do our due diligence and look into these organizations. And these big name organizations, I would expect nothing less from them. These organizations that get funding from federal, state, local, I would expect nothing different from them. But these organizations who are crying out saying we need more funding so we can service more people. Looking at the Vision of David, who's touched over 33 kids, who has a book club, who's helping kids get scholarships to go to college, who's helping them get into the military. That's outcomes. But they need funding. They need money, and more importantly, they need the support of their leadership to do that. So let's do our due diligence and find out what these organizations are doing. I think that's our responsibility too. But they won't even get a chance to show us what their outcomes are, Councilmember Broadway, because we just said if you haven't been in existence for 3 years, you won't even get to come before us to do a presentation so we can even see. So we're just going to count them out because they've only been in existence for a year or 2 years. That's not fair. And I don't think it's a safe assumption for you to make that they haven't had outcomes or they don't have outcomes because they haven't been in existence very long. It's kind of offensive too.
Let me just speak to the 3-year clause in here. That follows the United Way's standards as well. So,
and exactly why I fought against not allowing United Way to take control of this process. Come on, y'all.
Any other comment?
I do have another comment. So you said that we are going to not make decisions tonight because we have one council member online and one is not here. We also have another very important discussion coming up under new business. Are we going to delay that conversation as well? Because city business is not being done. So there's also another important decision after that further down the agenda. So are we not going to make decisions based on that, or are we going to, so what do we do moving forward for the rest of the agenda?
Well, I would ask you, if you were in the place of, if you were not here for an excused absence, would you want a serious decision made with you not participating in it?
I can answer that a lot of ways, Mayor Ham, but I'm
Okay,
just going to
so-
keep it simple
so
and say
I
we
don't
might as
think-
well just send everybody home then if we're not going to do.
I don't think we're just arbitrarily deferring this. We're doing it because this is important, and we need to have participation for council members here. So,
Mayor Ham, I'm not speaking to the NPO support process because you did say we were going to take a look at it and not discuss it tonight. But I am extremely concerned about the new business and us making a decision on, and I don't want to jump ahead, but I am very concerned that we discuss and make a decision on the new business that's coming up with Goldsboro alumni funding. I'm very concerned about that.
yes, ma'am.
So I would trust that we would move forward and make a decision on this tonight.
On the new business item you're speaking of, Ms. Jones?
Number 4, new business.
Yes, okay, all right, thank you. Okay, let's move to new business.
So when do we come back to this NPO discussion? Because we've been putting it off for 2 or 3 meetings. So when do we come back? So I want these organizations to be able to get prepared and to do all of these things that are necessary to have them to go through this process. So when do we do this?
Well, that's what I just said in my opening remarks, that you just got this on Saturday, and what I wanted to do tonight is have some discussion, and we come back and we act on it at the next council meeting.
But what was the discussion? Are we gonna change the 3-year thing? Are we changing that?
Well,
Because that's what I requested. So that was the discussion, but I was the only one that discussed it. So are we gonna change that? Because when I get the draft again, it's gonna still have the 3 years, so the discussion was for nothing.
well, are you going to propose that it be removed?
Do I need to do it in form of a motion?
Yes?
Okay. I would like to make a motion that we remove the 3-year minimum from this NPO support process policy.
Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second that.
Motion's been made and second. Is there any discussion? All in favor of removing the minimum 3-year from the eligibility of a agency participating in the nonprofit funding process, raise your hand.
Mayor, we're gonna need to do a roll call since Ms. Jones.
I'm sorry.
is via-
Roll call, I'm sorry.
Yes, sir.
Mayor Ham,
No.
Councilwoman Jones,
Yes, we still need some provisions, but I do agree with moving the 3-year.
Councilman Broadway,
No.
Councilwoman Matthews,
Yes.
Councilman Gaylor,
Yes.
Councilman Aycock.
We have a 3-3. Motion fails. Okay.
Do you want to bring this back at the next council meeting then, to talk about when you want to interview these different nonprofits?
I want to come
that
back
qualify?
with a formal document that we can approve at the next council meeting,
Okay, sir.
and then we can talk about the time
Okay.
for the meetings. This is going to involve a
I'll-
lot of meetings on the part of the council to vet these agencies and then determine the funding and so forth.
Now, I'll have more information for you on the funding available, so to speak, in FY '23 and what the constraints are.
Okay, all right, thank you. Okay, the next item is on new business is the Goldsboro Alumni and Friends Homecoming Support Request. And I believe Mr. Packer is here, or is he here?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Come on up, sir. Good evening again, sir.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. I'm Gary Packer, I'm the National
Who you
President
got
of
with you
the
there?
Goldsboro Alumni Friends Incorporated, and I'll let him introduce himself.
I'm Raymond Smith Jr. I'm the president of the Goldsboro chapter of the Goldsboro Alumni and Friends Incorporated.
Welcome, sir.
Hello.
Okay, I came at the meeting, well, I guess it was last month, and I made a request, but I'm gonna go back. I met with the mayor and the city manager in October of last year, October 28th, and we had this discussion about the city actually being a sponsor or sowing a seed into our organization as we prepare for this year's 67th homecoming celebration. And I was kind of excited as I was hearing y'all discuss the other nonprofits and talking about output. We've been in, for 67 years, our organization has been giving out scholarships. The last 2 years, pandemic, we still gave out over $70,000 worth of scholarships, even though we did not have in-person meetings. But we still was able to give out $70,000 in scholarships. So we do have output. And if you look at it from totality, it's well over the $1 million worth of scholarships that we have given out since the inception of this organization. And as I was looking over that list of the NPOs, the ones that y'all have for nonprofits, we're not on that list because we're not seeking operational monies for our yearly functions. But we are the only one that actually creates financial opportunity as far as money for the city than any of those organizations that's listed on that document. Well over the millions. It's estimated $3.8 to $4 million is what our financial impact is every year that we meet here in the city of Goldsboro. Every business, downtown, restaurants, hotels, every venue, even the city's own building, the event center, is probably already booked the rest of this during that homecoming weekend. So we give back. I had asked for the request of $10,000, and what we would do with those funds. Being that we did have the pandemic, our biggest influx of funds comes from membership. Now, because of the COVID, those things went down drastically because a lot of people said, well, we won't be coming home this year. So we all suddenly fell upon a financial strain. The facilities, we were not able to rent the facilities out because of the constraints that we have. So income dropped. But what I'm looking at specifically is that we want to be able to create a greater experience for not only our members, but for the city at large. And one of the things I had proposed was on that Saturday, because our biggest expense is food. And when we met with the mayor in 2019, Mayor Chuck, and that was a March meeting that we met with him. And he said, well, we hadn't discussed it, but he did bring it before the council. And I think it was $3,600 that he gave us that year. And that was just to cover one area of the food that year. Now, here we are 2 years later, inflation has gone up. And so just for that one event, you're looking at over close to $5,000 just for that one event, just in food costs alone. And so we have 3 other food events. One particularly we want to do on that Saturday to incorporate the community that we can give out free to the individuals in the community. And so we have to kind of incorporate that cost at an estimate with the Saturday and Sunday together. You're looking at either anywhere from $4,000 to potentially $5,000 worth of food that we would have to purchase to be able to accommodate the community, because up until now, it has only been specifically for members only, because our organization does not have any major sponsorship, no corporations, no one sponsors us. All of our funds come through volunteers and through membership. So what we do with those funds is to provide the events that we have during the homecoming experience. Now, I did, at the encouragement of the city manager, I did apply for the travel and tourism money, which we did receive, which is $2,500. That money is specifically targeted only for advertisement. And because it has those constraints, we cannot use any of those funds for anything other than advertisement, which we really don't have to advertise our show because we are self-advertised. We've been doing this for 67 years. Everybody puts it on their calendar and say, hey, I'm going to Goldsboro, North Carolina, because Goldsboro alumni is going to put on a great and magnificent event. Every year we invite the City Council, Wayne County Chamber of Commerce members to come and be a part of our event, specifically on that Thursday night during the awards night. And that's the night we give out all our scholarships. And we serve every school in the county through the legacy portion of our organization, whether a grandparent, parent, aunt, or uncle was a graduate of one of those schools, Dillard or Goldsboro, but yet they're still at another school in the county. Those children are still eligible for our scholarships. And so we make sure that we serve everybody. Also, we have on site now a computer lab that we have partnered with Wayne Community College, that we provide courses for the elderly in the community, some basic computer courses. There's 2 levels, because that divide is so great with the new technology that they're trying to catch up. And so we provide that service to them also. Just last week, we were able to give out 100 computers to deserving students in this area. And that's through Kremlin Institute, plus Southern Bank actually paid for the refurbishment. And so, but they partnered with us to be able to give out these computers. And at current, we have given out over 400 devices to deserving students in the county. So that's output. Now, That's a lot of output. But not only that, we're bringing a lot of finances to this area. And it's undeniable, everybody that comes to Goldsboro know during Memorial Day weekend, you're gonna see our flags flying, you're gonna see the out-of-state tags, you're gonna see every restaurant full, every venue is taken. And so we're just looking at from this standpoint. In order to get corn, you gotta plant a seed. And when you plant that seed, you get one ear. But that one ear creates more seed to create a larger crop. And so what we're asking from the city to be a seed sower into what we're doing so we can do more for the city and create more finances by bringing more people to be a part of our organizational activities. Now, I'm gonna allow Mr. Smith, because he's more like my historian, and he can share some of the historical perspective stuff about the organization also.
I really don't have anything else to add. It's hard when you follow a preacher. And so Mr. Packer pretty much has said everything that needs to be said. I don't think there's anyone here that's not familiar with the Dillard Goldsboro alumni, what it brings to this community and what it means to this community. So we're just coming asking for your support.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. This is City Councilwoman Jones. As you know, last week, a couple of weeks ago, I spoke to Mr. Packard, and he explained to me that he had spoken with someone at the city. We had not been aware of it, and so I asked that it be put on the agenda. And as it was put on the agenda, I asked the council that we would sponsor instead of partnering with the Dillard alumni. And I don't need to say anymore, I am not from Goldsboro, nor did I go to Goldsboro, but I see all the wonderful things that Dillard alumni does for this city. I see all the money that it generates. I see the positiveness that it gives back to the community and everyone that's in it. I was very disappointed to see that we as a city could only provide $2,500 for signs and then $680 for something else. The signs, I'm very aware, I see the signs, but that's something that's already there. It's something we could just flip back and put the signs up and do the other advertisement. And as they said, I hate to echo them, I'm not from Goldsboro, but I know the 3-day weekend when Dillard alumni is coming into town. And I really think that this is an organization that we as a city should get behind and that we should help them. Now, I am aware of the $4,000 that Mayor Chuck Allen provided. I am aware of the signs that were out on 795 from Fremont and coming in from 95. Those are good things. But I am going to ask, as the city and a city councilwoman, that we really work with Dillard alumni and friends and give them the funds they need. And I noticed that you said something about that it hadn't been allocated in the budget, but we can look to other funds to provide the things that Dillard alumni need. And Mr. Packard, thank you. Mr. Smith, thank you for coming today. Mr. Packard, thank you for taking the time to talk with me. I enjoyed our conversations and I learned even more about Dillard. But I am suggesting that the city get behind Dillard alumni.
I'd like to make an additional comment. You know, ever since I can remember, even going back to Mayor Plunk, the city has been instrumental in helping us get to where we are now. I know between Mayor Plunk and City Manager Slozak, they kind of guided them towards some funds to help refurbish the building through some kind of city grant monies. And it was well over about $400,000 to $500,000 in renovational costs to help get the facility where it is today. And so even though the mayor passed, the city manager saw it out to the end. City Manager Slozak saw that process out to the end. Actually, we went back and requested more funds to put a roof on the Neil Stitt building. And City Manager Slozak saw that through the end. And so the city has been instrumental, but it seemed like there had been a divide that happened somewhere that it kind of fell off. And being that we are one of the biggest shows in town, only second to the air show that comes out on base, that we feel like we are deserving that the city be a sponsor partner with us. And a $10,000 to me is a small ask for what we actually bring in return to the city. And so as I was saying earlier, when you plant a seed, you're gonna get a larger crop. And that 10,000 is just a seed for a larger crop that we're gonna bring into the city. And I thank y'all for hearing us on this evening. If you have any questions.
Mr. Packer.
Yes, sir.
Representative Smith, I know I taught one of you in school, and I think I had both of you in class, if I'm not mistaken.
You had both of us.
I thought I did. And when I was at Goldsboro, I saw the benefits of the Dillard Goldsboro High School alumni. I've seen over the years the many, many scholarships that y'all have provided that have helped some of our youth who wouldn't go to college unless they had the scholarship from y'all. And I appreciate it. And the big question I have, I'm all for what you're asking for. But the question I got to have is where are we going to get the money from? And Catherine, that's...
Well, we can allocate and appropriate some additional fund balance if the council so desires, if that's the case.
City Councilwoman Jones, I had suggested, travel tourism and parks and recreation. Could we look there?
Well, I think it would come out of fund balance or end of year funding. What doesn't get spent can be spent on this, or it can come from fund balance. But the
Okay.
occupancy tax is designed to do what it's doing here in this case, is advertising to bring people to the event. So I think you would use general fund in this case to support
Okay.
what they're requesting.
I also like to speak to this issue. We just got through talking about the nonprofit funding process, and one of the items in this general portion of the document talks about that the mission of any agency receiving public funds must align with one or more of the statutory allowed categories as defined in statute 160A-209C. I have this document here in front of me, and it specifically points out what tax monies may be allocated and spent for. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say, while the Dillard alumni is a great tradition for the city of Goldsboro, it probably does not fall in one of these categories here. Now, this is just my quick look at it. I'm not drilling down into it, but that doesn't mean that the city can't allocate money. But we're undergoing an audit now, as everybody understands. So we have to be very careful about what we spend money for. So I'll just want to point that out. We are, as has already been discussed, giving monies out of travel and tourism, same as we did for Freedom Fest. We didn't give any tax monies to Freedom Fest, which is also a big event for the city of Goldsboro. It did receive in-kind support from the city, just like we would give and have always given, for that matter, to the Dillard alumni event. So I just want to bring this up into discussion here.
So you just mentioned, as it relates to the nonprofit and the general statute for that nonprofit process, this is not that same process. So,
but it is a nonprofit, isn't it?
We are a nonprofit, but
That's
we're
the point I
not
was making.
going into that same venue as what y'all mentioned in the other NPO
Right,
list.
correct.
okay.
Now, I thought I heard you're opening to the general public. You want to do food or something with this? It's not specifically Dillard alumni?
No, it's all of us.
Okay.
what part of that statute do they fit in? They do scholarships, they do food, they do parades, they do entertainment. Their whole weekend is filled with all kind of stuff. So what on that list falls that they could fit into one of those categories? Because I'm almost certain something that they provide and do and a part of is very much on that list. If that's the case, then some of the nonprofits, we may need to go back and look at them to see if they fit, because they do this very same work that some of those nonprofits that y'all gonna fund do.
Well, this is an event. It's not a
They give
service
out
per se.
scholarships through that event as well. There's a lot of things that happen within that event.
I have one question, if I may.
Sure.
I understand that the city does provide some funding for the Wings Over Wayne. Okay.
I can't speak to that. I don't.
Well, you've been, yes, it's been affirmed.
The air show.
Yes, and
So it's the same
what?
idea.
Yeah. So basically, I don't understand what the differentiation would be.
Well, all I'm saying right now, Representative, is that I'm just bringing this out. I'm not.
Oh, I appreciate
And
that.
I'm saying we are under an audit, and I want to make sure that whatever we do it ethically and legally.
A city attorney, because y'all talked about kicking stuff down, kicking the can. Let's stop kicking this one. Can we or can we not provide this funding ethically and legally to the Dillard Alumni Association?
My understanding is yes. I'm going to yield to Catherine since she's the finance director on that question.
Ms. Catherine, can we legally and ethically give money to the Dillard Alumni Association?
So I think what we have to, if it is open to the general public, so it has to provide.
Excuse me, I cannot hear her. Could she step up? I can't hear her.
She's coming, Councilwoman. She's coming to the mic.
Good evening, everyone. So the main thing is the event would have to be open to the general public. So you're providing not just to particularly the Dillard alumni, it's to everyone.
Mm-hmm.
So it would have to serve the public, or it could serve like low to moderate income, elderly, disproportionately advantaged populations you can serve. So if that's the case, then it would be possible to use taxpayer-funded dollars to help provide some of that support. And that's the statute reference that the mayor read. That's what we're talking about, is that.
Yeah, that's it.
This is City Councilwoman Jones. I do not see where the Dillard alumni excludes anyone. Am I incorrect, gentlemen?
You're absolutely correct. Does not exclude anyone. One other point that I would like to emphasize based on what the finance director just said. If you'll go back to something that Mr. Packer stated earlier about the CDBG funds that actually funded the renovation of our facility, in that CDBG agreement was a fiduciary responsibility on behalf of the Dillard Goldsboro Alumni and Friends Incorporated to serve the indigent population in the city of Goldsboro. That was part of the agreement. As a matter of fact, it has to be in excess of 50%, so 51+% of the services that we provide have to be give back as far as the community is concerned. So we can't even charge. For instance, for years we didn't even charge Wayne County Public Schools for using our facilities for every type of event that they could think of. And individuals who live in and around the surrounding community are still allowed to use our facility free of charge because of that fiduciary agreement between the city and the Dillard Goldsboro alumni that was established under Mayor Plunk's administration.
Now, again, you said you gave at your last allocation of scholarships, how much?
It was $35,000 for 2021, and the year before it was around 39, somewhere in there those 2 years.
And that's exponentially lower than what we were doing prior to, because we averaged $100,000 each year in scholarship giving prior to the pandemic.
And they're going to have, you will have an economic impact to hotels and restaurants.
Yes, sir.
And whatever here.
4 straight days, we'll fill up every hotel, we'll fill up every venue, including the Goldsboro Event Center, the Maxwell Center. Everything will be booked, and each of these bookings will be directly affiliated with the Dillard Goldsboro Alumni and Friends Incorporated.
We're also working with Travel and Tourism to get literature in every major hotel so we can track these events, because what has been taking place, when I spoke with the hotels in travel and tourism, they were only recording Saturday and Sunday night, wasn't even recording Thursday or Friday. And then they were only recording rooms that were blocked under our name, not all the other rooms that were blocked with classes who were blocking. And so that's why the number was kind of distorted.
So do I need to make a motion?
Do your scholarships support low to moderate income? Are they specifically designed for that?
They are specifically need-based.
So that is one of the categories, public education
Got it.
supplement funding for elementary and secondary public education. So, you know, if the money we gave you went to that, it would be pretty clean, and then you could take whatever you raise otherwise for these other purposes, perhaps.
Absolutely.
I appreciate the mayor bringing that up, because it is important that we have these discussions on the record, especially given that we're under audit, to be able to bring this forward, ensure, working with the city attorney, working with the finance director, working with the manager, that we have vetted that on the record publicly. I think that's really healthy. Again, we are under audit. I appreciate your comments. I appreciate you bringing that forward to make sure that we can vet that publicly.
No offense taken.
Any other questions?
Councilwoman Matthews, Councilwoman Matthews, are you gonna make a motion?
I was waiting to see if I needed to. There seems to be some more discussion on the table. So I was just waiting.
I think we're through discussing.
I'm asking that we make a motion. We've had much discussion, so I think we've gotten enough information. I really think that we can pull funds from the general funds to help this organization, and I make a motion that we do that.
You gotta give a
How
dollar
much?
amount.
And I can make it specific, or Councilwoman Matthews can make it specific, but I think we need to make a motion and vote on this.
Well, you have the floor at the moment, so are you deferring to Councilwoman Matthews?
No, I'm saying that I am asking that we make a motion to decide on what we're going to do with Dillard alumni funding.
She can make a motion.
And I make a motion that we give them the $10,000 that they're requesting.
Okay, so you made a motion to,
I move that, yes.
okay, you made a motion to award the Dillard alumni $10,000 for their event. Is that correct?
Yes.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
You second. Motion's been made and second. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion to award the Dillard alumni $10,000 for their annual event, please raise your hand.
Roll call. Mayor.
No.
Roll call.
Roll call. No.
Mayor Ham.
No.
Councilwoman Jones.
Yes.
Councilman Broadway.
Yes.
Councilwoman Matthews.
Yes.
Councilman Gaylor.
Yes.
Councilman Aycock.
Yes.
Motion's made and carried.
Thank y'all so
Thank you.
much.
Just for clarity purposes, Mayor, the finance director will have to bring back a budget ordinance at the next meeting for the council to pass, because that's not something that was in the budget already from in
Okay.
this past fiscal year.
Very good.
I'm sorry, Councilwoman Jones, can you state your name and your revote, please?
Hiawatha Jones, District 1, yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, we'll now move to the consent agenda. And Ms. Simon,
Yes, sir.
the consent agenda.
Okay. Item J, planning.
Good evening, council men and women. Excuse me.
Good evening, Mayor.
Let me get my stuff together for you. Ladies and gentlemen, I was going to tell you that I don't know that this is on our slide this evening. However, we're speaking of the property located off of 11th Street, which is our new 301 residential lot subdivision. Should I wait, Mayor?
I think you better hold on a second.
Okay. I was just saying that, unfortunately, I'm sorry, there's not a slide presentation for it, but I will bring it to your attention that the subject property is located off of 11th Street between North William Street and Wayne Memorial Drive. It is our new residential cluster subdivision of 301 lots known as Magnolia Grove. So the applicant is requesting that contiguous property described by meets and bounds in your packet of the attached petition be annexed to the City of Goldsboro. The map showing the property proposed to be annexed are attached. City Council approved the change of zones request for the above property on October 7, 2019. So a change of zone request from residential R16 and R9 conditional district to residential 6 conditional district was approved for the 303 lot cluster subdivision. Separate site plan approval was required, and phase 1 of this project is currently in process. A change of zone request from residential 16 to residential R6 conditional zoning was also approved for multifamily development directly across the street from this property as well. Again, we have not had any separate development plans submitted at this time, but separate site plan approval will be required when and if that time should come. And number 3, the change of zone request from residential R9 conditional zoning and residential R16 to office and institutional was approved for future commercial development. This property was actually on the same side of the street as the development. And once again, separate site plan approval has not been submitted but will be required at that time. So all of these properties that were originally owned by one individual owner are now owned by KG Plaza. And so City Council, in order for the annexation proceeding to continue, City Council shall fix a date for the public hearing on the proposed annexation if the petition is considered sufficient by the city clerk. The City Council at their meeting on tonight, April 18th, would request Madam Clerk to determine the sufficiency of the petition. If the petition is determined to be sufficient, a public hearing will be scheduled and a report will be prepared by the Planning Department in conjunction with other city departments for submission to the council. So I bring that before you tonight as part of the consent agenda. Are there any questions regarding this petition for voluntary annexation?
Any questions? Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Item K has been moved to items requiring individual action, so we'll go to item L, grant project budget amendment for the community development block grant.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The item that I have today is an amendment to the CDBG and Home Special Revenue Fund. We have the 2021 allocation for the CDBG grant for $354,000, the Home 2021 grant for $250,000, the CDBG CV, which is round 3, for $220,000, and the Home ARP funding for $907,000. This total funding, which is for fiscal year 22, is $1,733,522. At this time, we're asking the council to appropriate these expenditures so that we may fulfill the terms of the grant agreement. The allocation of the expenditures, as you see it in the budget ordinance amendment, were based on recommendations from Ms. Felicia Williams, the Community Relations Director, as well as any limits that are placed on the funds by HUD. Also included in this amendment are reallocations of CDBG 2019 and 20, as well as home 2019 and 20. Now that we've carried out the activities, I'm having to reallocate based on the actual activity for the actual line item objects of expenditure. There is no overall net change in the grant amount for those prior years. So we're just asking the council to approve that budget ordinance amendment.
Any questions?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Not necessarily about the document in its entirety, but as I was going through the CDBG CV FY 2021, for the COVID-19 in parentheses, I noticed that it talks about nonprofits and the money that was allotted to them. Ms. Felicia, would you mind providing us a list of who the recipients of that monies were? Is that?
We can do that.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, I think you have quite a few, so we'll go to the next one.
Yes, sir.
Item M.
Okay. So this is the operating budget amendment for FY 21-22. I have a lot of items, so I apologize for the length of it, but there were just a lot of cleanup items that I needed to get taken care of. The first one is about insurance. This is the non-health related insurance. I needed to do some reallocations, and this is kind of based on, we budgeted based on the way it had been done for years and years. But with our new insurance broker, we were able to actually get direct allocations, so we found out that some things were not split kind of properly as the way they should have been. So I'm having to reallocate those funds between our different operating funds, and this goes for the multi-peril, the auto insurance, and the workers' comp. And I mean, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail with that because it's really tedious. But at any rate, we were talking about roughly $189,000 amongst the funds between multi-peril and auto, and then the workman's comp was about $136,000. Part of this is the fact that we had a number of insurance increases. We had several claims on our autos. Our workers' comp went up like 19%, auto went up 90%, general liability went up about 30%, umbrella went up about 79%. So we did have a lot of additional cost in this past fiscal year. Yes, sir.
I apologize for my ignorance here. 90% and 76% overall, those are huge numbers.
They are big.
Is that like internal risk management practices that we need to discuss, or is that the nature of the industry?
So, well, the auto was
little column B.
the auto was the worst. We had a number of claims, and some of them were on the city where it was the employee's responsibility, but we had a lot of things that are outside of our control. We have a lot of employees on the road in our vehicles and our equipment, and we are subject to getting in accidents, not of their fault. So that was one reason that's been an issue. At almost every department head staff meeting, Bernadette Dove, who takes care of the risk management part with her employee, I mean, they talk about having auto safety, about encouraging your employees. I think we've done a much better job. Unfortunately, this renewal happened in August, and it's the prior year that we had a ton of claims. So that's why it reflected in the insurance rates that we had this year. I think they've done much better. I hope it'll reflect. However, the other issue is with inflation, you know, the economics of the day we're dealing with. I've already been told by the broker that we are going to expect insurance increases in every line of coverage. We know that cyber liability is going to be huge. Auto, and the property, things like that, just because of inflation and the cost. Unfortunately, it's something I think we all experienced, even on a personal level, about our insurance increasing. So,
thank you.
Yes, sir. Okay. So the next section of the budget amendment has to do with some adjustments to the Paramount Theater and the Goldsboro Event Center. Mr. Twist had requested some additional funds to fund operations. The Paramount has experienced revenue growth that have increased really pre-pandemic levels, so he has well more than sufficient revenue to be able to cover what he's asking in addition to help him finish out the rest of the fiscal year. And so we're appropriating those additional revenues. I was very conservative when I budgeted those revenues last year. So what he's asking for is not even the total of what he's estimating to come through with. Not on top of the fact that they were awarded the SBA ARPA grant, so they brought in another $332,000 in revenue that has not been appropriated at all. We're just going to let that roll into fund balance unless something comes up that we need that. The Goldsboro Event Center is the same situation. It's a much smaller level. We're adding about another $40,000 there, but he has the revenue to back that up, and it has not been previously budgeted. In telephone cost, earlier this year we started a project to better identify where our Verizon cell phone costs were occurring at. We found out really there were a lot in police and fire, so what we're doing is we're reallocating it out of the IT budget. There's no change to the overall budget. It's about $85,000, and we're just reallocating those costs, and we wanted to bring that to council just because of the size of it. Fuel cost, of course, as all of us feel it at the pump, costs have risen dramatically this past quarter, and there's no indications of that easing. The gas and diesel expenditure accounts that Mr. Fletcher's department manages, they are completely depleted. So what we're doing is we're asking for an additional $146,000 in gas and $58,000 in diesel in order for Mr. Fletcher's department to be able to complete that function for the rest of the year. These are offset by charges for services that are billed out monthly to each department as well as to the GWTA. We expect our year end to be approximately about $900,000 in gas and diesel. It's a significant expense for the city. In the garage, they also have outside repairs that are depleted at this point. As you all are aware, the fire chief requested $55,000 to repair a motor to one of their fire trucks. That helped deplete his account. So what we're doing is we're asking for an additional appropriation so he can finish out the year of the garage can. And, of course, these are services that are billed out internally, so the offset is charges for services. We're requesting some additional property tax fees so that we can finish out the year, partly in the NCVTS and partly real property. It's about $9,000 in land sales. I don't budget for the revenue on the real property sales because I don't know what's going to come forth that particular year. But we also have to pay our share to Wayne County when it is a jointly owned property. So what I'm asking for is an appropriation of $26,000 to pay for those expenses. And it's advertising too because that's expensive as well. This is offset completely by land sale revenue. In the golf division of Parks and Recreation, they need an additional appropriation for alcohol. I actually did not budget any revenue for the beverage resale, and they've really done very, very well. I think it's like $10,000, $15,000, and so they need about another $5,000 to get through the rest of the year. We also have, as we've talked about, repairs for insurance claims. We've had a number of incidents this year, and again, I don't budget for the revenue, the insurance proceeds. The departments have to spend the money out. We make sure the insurance proceeds come in first, then we do the repairs. And so at this point, we have about a total of $103,000. The general fund has about $80,000 in repairs that it's had to perform this year. Utility fund is about $23,000. And so the revenue that's offsetting the expense are insurance proceeds that we have in the bank account right now. In the personnel department, the city manager authorized a transfer of a position in the police department to the IT department. There is no increase in the total FTEs. The adopted that the council approved before June 30th was 482. The council approved the addition of 7 FTEs during this past fiscal year, so we're at a total of 489. We are transferring funding of salaries of $20,000 from the police department to the IT department to carry out that request. Okay. There is an access drive at the Maxwell Center that the City Council approved. They authorized these improvements on September 20th, 2021, and it has to do with the realignment of the access drive at the Maxwell Center. the cost for the city is not to exceed $50,000. And so we have prior year loan proceeds that we did not appropriate last year. We didn't appropriate this year, so it's essentially a fund balance issue. We have fund balance for loan proceeds. So we're using those to help pay for this $50,000 access drive. We also have a forfeited performance bond. Planning had to do a demolition at 302 South John Street. We had received a performance bond from Preservation North Carolina in 2015. The demolition the city had to pay for in November of 21 was $5,000. So at this time, we're asking for an appropriation for that expenditure, and it's going to be funded with that forfeited performance bond revenue. We had several other small general fund, not really small, but anyway, we had other general fund items to help fund solid waste overtime of about $21,000, fire overtime of about $58,000, fire vacation payout of $29,000, additional audit fees of about $17,000. For some reason, we had really high natural gas this past year across multiple departments. That's an additional $24,000. Parks and Recreation has additional costs over and above about $5,000 for T.C. Coley. Fleet charges for them were an additional $8,000. And then in our non-recurring capital outlay organization, we have our first payment to the Wayne County for the Shell building of $142,000. That was billed back in September. So all of these items, again, it's going to be an appropriation out of that prior year loan proceeds to help offset that. Just as a snapshot for you, the fund balance appropriated in the general fund, the only thing we've appropriated in fund balance is for our purchase order rollovers of $156,000. So we're really trying to stay true to building that fund balance back again. In the utility fund, I have a transfer to the Plate Settlers project. The city is committed. We have to pay the loan fees from our utility fund. We can't borrow that money. So that's $34,627. The project is done. So we need to transfer that money in order to handle that cost. In the occupancy tax fund, the main item that's there is we expect the revenues to come in over and above what was estimated, and we need some additional funds in order to pay Wayne County their 40% of the 80%, the 20% that comes in, so I'm asking for that as well. So that the total of budget amendment was roughly $1.2 million, and again, none of that is coming out of fund balance. Those are all revenues that are already coming in or that we expect. So that's all I have for that, unless you have any questions.
That's a lot.
That was a lot. I apologize.
Any questions?
I was wondering on that first page where it said insurance broker for general liability for liquor, and I was trying to figure out where in the world that came in until I saw the golf course.
Right, golf course, Paramount, and GEC do that, yep. Okay. And then I'll bring back an amendment for the $10,000 for the Dillard alumni to the next meeting, okay? And then I think my last item is withdrawal, the sale of property at 211 South Slocum. The council approved this item July 13th, 2020. Wayne County approved it July 21st, 2021. Our city attorney has tried multiple times to contact Ms. Amari Oliver so that a closing on the property could be finalized. The last attempt set a deadline of April 1st. So it was in conversations with the attorney. He preferred that I would bring it back and have council pass a resolution to withdraw because it is the council's option. That's how we write the original resolution. As long as the deed has not been recorded, the council has the option to withdraw it. So at this time, the city manager's office requested that we take steps to do that. So that's why I'm here before you tonight to ask you to pass that resolution to withdraw the property for sale for 211 South Slocum from Ms. Amari Oliver, and direct me to return the earnest money deposit so that the city manager's office can offer the property for sale to someone else.
Any questions? Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Next item from
Thank you,
Downtown Development is the Downtown Development Department Office Lease Agreement.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. As you said, I have item N, Downtown Development Department Office Lease Agreement. The Downtown Development Department has been a department of the city since 1993, when the existing Downtown Goldsboro Development Corporation partnered with the city to form a public-private partnership. The two entities have worked successfully together to create and carry out our downtown development efforts as the North Carolina Main Street community for nearly 20 years. Main Street utilizes an approach to preservation-based economic development to drive growth in over 3,000 historic downtowns across the country. Using the Main Street approach, the DGDC and DDD have spurred a significant amount of economic development, resulting in more than $66 million in public and private investment, 167 building renovations, 400 net new jobs, and 68 net new businesses since 2013. The Main Street approach prompts the DGDC and DDD to work closely together as they have done since 1993. The DGDC is comprised of a private nonprofit board with 24 volunteer members and 4 volunteer-led committees: design, economic vitality, promotions, and merchants. Downtown Development Director, the board and committees are supported by DDD staff, including the Downtown Development Director, myself, Business and Property Development Specialist, and a Marketing and Administrative Assistant. In 2008, the City of Goldsboro supported the DGDC's decision to develop a vacant property behind City Hall, 219 North John Street. This calculated risk on behalf of the DGDC was taken in an effort to encourage further development in the block, which then led to $60,000 of revenue to the City of Goldsboro after the sale of the remaining buildings in the block. By 2020, all 4 properties surrounding DGDC were rehabbed for a total private investment of $2 million. In addition, the tax value in that block has increased by nearly 500%, and tax revenue has increased by nearly 600%. In 2013, the downtown development staff moved into the newly rehabilitated 219 North John Street. In support of DDD staff, the city agreed to cover utilities, including power, water and refuse, phone, and internet access, as well as janitorial services and insurance of city-owned property within the building. The DGDC provides the office space at no cost to the city, including a large conference room on the 2nd floor. In 2019, the DGDC Board of Directors began discussions of replicating this effort, realizing the impact their investment had on the surrounding properties and the example it set for other investors. As a result, the DGDC purchased the former Record Rack property at 116 North Center Street, vacant for 14 years and in significant need of rehabilitation. The final investment will be around $600,000 and includes an office space on the 1st floor and an upper story residential space. The current space generates $920.76 in city and MSD tax revenue, with an expected potential city revenue of more than $4,500. That's for city and MSD taxes. The DGDC has proposed to enter into the same arrangement with the City of Goldsboro, providing office space for DDD staff, as well as shared use of storage, kitchen space, and a conference room. While no lease was formally produced for the current office, staff has produced a formal lease agreement between DGDC and the City of Goldsboro for your review. With support from DGDC, DDD staff recommends that the city enter into an agreement that includes the following. The DGDC will provide no-cost leasing of office space for staff of the Downtown Development Department in perpetuity until one of the parties opts out. The city will cover the cost of power, water and refuse, phone, Wi-Fi, custodial services, minor maintenance, and insurance of city-owned property. It is recommended by motion to accept the Downtown Development staff's recommendation to enter into an agreement with the Downtown Goldsboro Development Corporation for placement of Downtown Development staff consistent with the aforementioned terms. You also have the lease agreement that I've prepared. It's been reviewed by Ron as well as Catherine and Tim. So that's the official lease agreement that would be signed.
Any questions?
Yeah, I got a question.
Okay.
Exactly why do you need this property? I mean, can't you, we've operated out of John Street location and done, I thought, good.
Yeah, we've done very well. That's a good question. It took a lot of discussion by the board, but the goal in moving to the current property was to spur investment, and we've done just that. So we moved into that vacant block where, I mean, if we hadn't moved in, who knows if it would still be standing. So we took that risk, we being the DGDC took that risk knowing that someone had to do it. So the goal was to kind of put their money where their mouth was. They're constantly asking property investors to invest in their property to spur investment. So they did just that. In turn, all of those properties, like I said, by 2020, they've all been redeveloped to the tune of a $2 million private investment for the city. So we are now looking around at other vacant properties, seeing that there are a lot of other properties that need to be rehabilitated. So the DGDC decided to, again, take that calculated risk, take on a property that has been vacant for 14 years, needed a significant amount of rehabilitation to salvage it, and then continue the story. So the DGDC has looked at this model as something that they can replicate every 5 to 10 years to just continue to rehabilitate spaces that need them. Not to be in the business of real estate, but to take on a property that needs it, then turn around and sell it and replicate that process. We get the benefit of moving into the space for free.
So,
Yes.
I didn't catch the answer in terms of, because I'm thinking the same question, like, why do we need to move? So I'm thinking, do you want a bigger space? Do you want to, like, what's the reason you want to move from here to that new location?
Well, the staff gets the benefit of going along with wherever the DGDC has purchased property. So we currently have to move because the building has been sold. So we won't have a place to go. But it's really the DGDC's decision to rehabilitate a property that needs it. So did they need to do that? No. Did they need to move into the North John Street block? No. But look at what has occurred as a result. In fact, I have some numbers on the resulting tax revenue. So let's see, let's look at tax values. So the tax value in 2013 for that entire block was $120,690. That's county, city, and MSD. The current tax value as of 2021 was $698,000. That is an increase just on that block of close to 500%. In addition, the tax revenues have gone up by close to 600%. So, do we need to do it? No, but is it worth it? I say absolutely.
So there are no type of, I know you say Ron and city manager and Miss Catherine reviewed all the documents and things like that, but even after getting there okay a few minutes ago, some of the board still had questions about the legality of it. There's no conflict with, there's no conflict with them taking their organization, also including the nonprofit side of it, and just using our facilities for free. There's no type of issue, angst, question marks there at all? Or am I misunderstanding how the process is going to be?
Flip backwards. It's not our facility.
Yeah.
DGDC.
It's the DCDG's facility.
It's their facility. They own the property.
But our
Correct.
staff, outside of our staff is going to be moving into that space as well, right?
Yes.
Correct.
They're going to be technically, quote unquote, leasing.
I was asking, I want to hear from the city manager first, Mayor, if you don't mind.
Technically, quote unquote, leasing from the DGDC to put the downtown development office.
The city is.
That's correct. And the lease cost is, if on the lease itself, the lease cost is paying the utilities, janitorial services. I don't recall, Aaron, you can go back on that just to be sure, but I don't recall there being a rental fee. It was just paying utilities and the janitorial services, and something else would be in exchange for our downtown office being able to use that space for their office. Otherwise, they'd have to move here somewhere else in another building, City Hall or what have you, to move their office into it.
This is very similar to what Travel and Tourism staff, the arrangement that they have. They're currently in the Chamber of Commerce office. In fact, I use their lease as an example to build this lease agreement. The difference is that the city pays a fee for them to be there to the tune of $9,600 a year.
Right. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the next item is item P, approval of resolutions to request funding through state grants. Engineering.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead,
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, City Council. So as the mayor said, this is for the approval of resolutions to request funding through ARPA. This is a little bit of a unique agenda item in that it has 3 separate resolutions. So the first one being what we commonly call our Phase 3 sanitary sewer rehab project. That it will be a new application by staff for a project in the area of about $8.5 million. So we have a May 2nd deadline that we're going to be applying for, and we've been working on to get that properly done. The second one is an existing project that staff has applied for previously last year. It was accepted by DWI, but at that time it was for a loan. So with the ARPA money coming down, we want to change that from a loan status to a grant status. And that's in the area of about $6 million as a current price tag. Number 3 is also an existing project, but we are going to be applying for reimbursement of just the design services for that project. That was done, there was a resolution back in 2020 by City Council to allow for it, and now we just, again, want to transfer that money from a loan to a grant status for the reimbursement funds. So those are the 3, and the recommendation by staff is by motion adopt all 3 resolutions, authorizing the city manager to execute and file applications on behalf of the city of Goldsboro with the state of North Carolina for these projects. Any questions?
Any questions?
Excellent.
Thank you. Next item is item Q, contract award for consulting services, community relations.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. City of Goldsboro seeks consultant services to produce an allocation plan describing the planned use of federal funds for housing and community development purposes, particularly for homelessness initiatives throughout the city. The development of the allocation plan will follow additional consultative processes as required by HUD. Per updated federal regulations issued by HUD on last month, the city will have to cover the upfront cost of the consultative services, and once the allocation plan is approved, the city can request reimbursement from the home ARP funding. Per the city's procurement process, the three home ARP consultant proposals received were evaluated and scored by the Community Relations Department staff. Based on results of the scores, Washington Business Dynamics won the competitive bid. Washington Business Dynamics proposes an engagement of several months to manage the process of soliciting resident and stakeholder engagement, produce an allocation plan, and work with city staff to create a final plan suitable for city council approval and submission to HUD. The engagement includes data collection to include citizen participation events, public hearings, comment period, etc., performing a gap analysis and priority needs assessment, planning and design to include implementation of a home ARP compliance matrix, and drafting an outline of the allocation plan, drafting the required allocation plan, and presentations to City Council. The engagement begins at council approval and ends when scope of services are completed. It is recommended that the City Council by motion adopt the attached resolution authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute a contract not to exceed $33,290 with Washington Business Dynamics for the development of the home ARP allocation plan.
Any questions? Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Okay, next item is, next few items is by Police Department Chief. You've got item R. Next on the agenda is Center Street Jam concert.
Good evening, Mayor and council members.
Good evening.
Got item Q on the agenda. It's going to be the Center Street Jam concert series, temporary street closing. City of Goldsboro's Downtown Development Department, in conjunction with the Downtown Goldsboro Development Corporation, looks forward to hosting an annual Center Street Jam summer concert series. Center Street Jam is a community favorite event, bringing crowds of 1,500 to 3,500 to enjoy live music, fellowship, and food from local vendors. As always, Center Street Jam concerts are free, family-friendly, and open to the public. The events will be hosted every other Thursday from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. at the Hub in the 200 block of South Center Street. Event dates are May 5th, May 20th, June 2nd, June 16th, June 30th, June 14th, July 28th, and August 11th. For the safety of event goers, the Downtown Development Department and the DGDC are requesting the closure of the northbound lanes of South Center Street from Spruce to Chestnut, and a partial closure of East Chestnut from Center Street to the Chestnut Street PD parking lot entrance from 4 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. As with all the downtown events affected, city departments will be contacted, and the following concerns are to be addressed. All intersections remain open for police department traffic control. 14-foot fire lane is to be maintained and provide access for fire and emergency vehicles. All activities, changes in plans, etc. will be coordinated with the police department. The police and fire department and public works department are to be involved in the logistical aspects of the event. It is recommended by motion, grant the request temporary closing of the northbound lanes of South Center Street from Spruce to Chestnut, and a partial closure of East Chestnut Street from Center Street to the Chestnut Street PD parking lot entrance as stated above. Any questions?
Any questions? Okay, item S,
S or R?
Dillard Goldsboro Alumni Parade.
Yep. So mine is item R. Again, it's the Dillard Goldsboro Alumni Parade temporary street closure. The Dillard Goldsboro Alumni and Friends Incorporated 67th Homecoming event has events scheduled through the weekend to include the Dillard Goldsboro Alumni and Friends Incorporated Annual Homecoming Parade. The street closing request for Saturday, May 28, 2022 is as follows. The parade route north on Center Street at Spruce Street to Mulberry Street, going around the traffic circle, heading south on Center Street back to Spruce Street and ending at Spruce Street. Staging area, streets closed for staging. Pine Street between James Street and John Street. Spruce Street between James Street and Center Street. Center Street between Elm and Center Streets. Additional closures recommended by the police department to manage traffic flow will encompass Mulberry Street from James Street to John Street, Walnut Street from James Street to John Street, Chestnut Street from James Street to John Street, Spruce Street from James Street to John Street, Pine Street from James Street to John Street, Center Street at Elm Street. Parking restrictions: no parallel parking on Center Street from Pine Street to Ash Street. Time requested for the street closing is from 8 a.m. to 11:30 p.m. Police have indicated that traffic will be restricted from 7 a.m. to 9:30 a.m. and all traffic stopped at 9:30 a.m. The actual parade will begin at 10 a.m. and end at approximately 11:30 p.m. As with all downtown events affecting city departments will be contacted and following concerns will be addressed. All intersections are made open for the police department traffic control, 14-foot fire lane to be maintained. All activities, changes in plans, etc. will be coordinated with the police department. Police and fire department should be involved in the logistical aspects of the event. Recommendation by motion, grant the requested temporary street closing of the sections of Pine Street, John Street, Center Street, James Street, Spruce Street, Chestnut Street, Walnut Street, Mulberry Street for the Dillard Goldsboro Alumni and Friends Incorporated 67th Homecoming Parade staging area and parade route from 8 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. on Saturday, May 28, 2022, as stated above.
Okay, Chief,
Any questions?
stop right there a second. Any
Yes, sir.
questions? Okay, in the sake of time here, it's 5 minutes before 7. I'm going to suggest we recess until 7 o'clock, come back, and once we get started, you can continue on, and we'll finish through the consent agenda items.
All right. Thank you, sir.
We recess until 7 o'clock. Monday, April 18, 2022, the Goldsboro City Council regular business meeting is called to order. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
Mayor Ham,
Here.
Councilwoman Jones. Councilwoman Jones. Councilman Broadway.
Here.
Councilwoman Matthews.
Present.
Councilman Gaylor.
Present.
Councilman Aycock.
Here.
Councilwoman Jones.
Councilwoman Jones, Hiawatha Jones, District 1 is here.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have a quorum. Council member Pollock is on an excused absence, so we'll go right into the order of business. At this time, I'd like to call Reverend David Elliott forward from St. James A.M. Zion Church. I've heard preach, and he's a fine preacher, sir. Come in and give us our opening prayer, please.
Amen.
And we follow that with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Okay, God bless you, Mayor Ham. Will you bow your head as I pray? Dear wise and loving Father, first let us say thank you on behalf of all who are gathered here today. Thank you for your many and abundant blessings. Thank you for life itself, for the measure of health we need to fulfill our callings, for sustenance and for friendship. Thank you, God, for the ability to be involved in useful work and for the honor of bearing appropriate responsibilities. Thank you for the freedom to embrace you and the freedom that you give each and every last one of us. Thank you for loving us even so. In the scriptures you have said that citizens ought to obey the governing authorities, since you have established those very authorities to promote peace and order and justice. Therefore, I pray for our mayor, for the various levels of city officials, and in particular for this assembled council. I'm asking that you would graciously grant them wisdom to govern amid the conflict, interests, and issues of our times. Give them a sense of the welfare and true needs of our people and confidence in what is good and what is fitting for each and every last one of us. It is in your most blessed name we pray. Let us all say amen.
Amen. Please join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I know you have a meeting to go to, sir.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much, and look forward to hearing your preaching again.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mayor.
Yes, sir. We're going to deviate a little bit from the agenda here and go back and finish the consent agenda items that we were speaking to before. Come on up, Chief. We ended on item S. We'll start with item T.
Okay. Item S on the agenda, consent agenda, is a temporary street closure for Jams Out Juneteenth. It will be a celebration of Black freedom, music artists, bouncy houses, and vendors and food trucks. The event will be hosted in the vacant lot next to the Well-Traveled Beer from 12 p.m. to 5 p.m. on South Center Street on June 18th, 2022. The event is sponsored by Curtis Media, and they are requesting the closure of the southbound lanes of South Center Street from Chestnut Street to Spruce Street from 11 a.m. to 6 p.m. As with all downtown events, affected city departments will be contacted and the following concerns are to be addressed. All intersections remain open for police department traffic control. 14-foot fire lane is to be maintained to provide access for fire and emergency vehicles. All activities, changes in plans, etc. will be coordinated with the police department, and the police and fire department should be involved in the logistical aspects of the events. Recommendation by motion, grant the requested temporary closing of South Center Street from Chestnut Street to Spruce Street as stated above.
Any questions?
Questions?
All right, sir.
Item T.
Q.
T or Q? I'm on T.
I think we're using a revised
sorry.
one. You don't have it.
So
But-
I wasn't kept in the loop. Got you. Sorry.
right.
I apologize. Street closing request, temporary street closing North Carolina Freedom Fest. The North Carolina Freedom Fest has a mission to celebrate military personnel with an exclusive, family-friendly festival honoring all those who served in the United States Armed Forces. Beginning on Friday night, May 20th, the Kids Zone inflatables will be open in the large empty lot on South Center Street, during which time food vendors, the Grub at the Hub event featuring the band Soul Psychedelic will take place. The following day, the main event, Festival, will feature the same Kids Zone, food trucks, live entertainment, street fair vendors, the Mount Olive Pickle Train, and a car and bike show. The Parks and Recreation Department is requesting the following street closures. On the 20th, the north and southbound lanes of South Center Street from Spruce Street to Chestnut Streets from 5 p.m. until 9 p.m. On the 21st, the north and southbound lanes of Center Street from Ash Street to Spruce Street, the 100 block of West Spruce Street between Center Streets and James Street, and Chestnut Street between John Street and James Street. All closures will be from 12 p.m. until 9 p.m. As with all downtown events, affected city departments will be contacted and the following concerns to be addressed. All intersections remain open for police department traffic control. 14-foot fire lane is to be maintained and provide access for fire and emergency vehicles. All activities, changes in plans, etc. will be coordinated with the police department. The police and fire department are to be involved in logistical aspects of the event. Certificate of insurance meeting city requirements will be provided in the advance of the event to the city finance director and city manager. Recommendation by motion, grant the request temporary street closing of north and southbound lanes of Center Street as stated above.
Any questions? If not, we'll go to item V, Waco Center Street takeover, temporary street closure.
Item V on the consent agenda, Waco Center Street takeover, temporary street closure. Thompson & Sons Group LLC is sponsoring a Waco Center Street takeover to include music, food trucks, and small businesses. The event will be hosted at the Hub from 11 a.m. to 6 p.m. on South Center Street on May 14th of 2022. Thompson & Sons Group LLC is requesting a closure of the South Center Street to include both lanes of South Center Street from Elm Street to Chestnut Street from 9 a.m. until 7:30 p.m. As with all downtown events, affected city departments will be contacted and the following concerns will be addressed. All intersections remain open for the police department traffic control. 14-foot fire lane is to be maintained and provide access for fire and emergency vehicles. All activities, changes in plans, etc. will be coordinated with the police department. The police and fire department should be involved in the logistical aspects of the event. Recommendation by motion, grant the requested temporary closing of South Center Street from Elm Street to Chestnut Street as stated above.
Any questions? If not, we'll go to the last one. Item W, Wayne County Crime Stoppers, Caper Chase, temporary street closing.
Okay. Item W, consent agenda, the Wayne County Crime Stoppers, Caper Chase, temporary street closing. An application was received from the Goldsboro Wayne Crime Stoppers requesting permission to hold their second annual Wayne Crime Stoppers Caper Chase on Saturday, June 25th, 2022 from 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. The race is scheduled to begin at Spruce Street on Center Street and end between Chestnut Street and Spruce Street on Center Street and runs through the downtown area of Walnut Street, Jefferson Street, and Mulberry Street. The police, fire, public works, and downtown Goldsboro offices have been notified of this request. The race has 3 race routes that we'll be using for the 10K, 5K, and the 1 mile run. All 3 routes will start and finish in the same area and have staggered start times. The time requested for the closing is from 7 a.m. until 11 a.m. Staff recommends approval of this request subject to the following conditions. All intersections remain open for the police department's traffic control. 14-foot fire lane is maintained in the center of the street to provide access for fire and emergency vehicles. All activities, changes in plans, etc. will be coordinated with the police department. The police, fire, public works, downtown Goldsboro offices are to be involved in logistical aspects of the event. Recommendation is recommended that the council approve the street closing of sections of Center Street at Pine Street, Spruce Street, Chestnut Street, Walnut Street, Mulberry Street for the second annual Wayne Crime Stoppers Caper Chase on Saturday, June 25th, 2022 from 8 a.m. until 12 p.m.
Any questions? If not, yes, sir.
Due to the agenda revisions, what we're reflecting as item T, Jams Out Juneteenth, Curtis Media, did that get read aloud?
Yes.
It did?
Yes.
All right, my apologies.
Thank you, Chief. That's it. Good evening.
You too.
Okay, we'll get back to the agenda now with item 4, approval of minutes. The next item is approval of the minutes of the work session and regular meeting of April 4th, 2022. Is there a motion to approve those minutes?
I make a motion to approve the minutes from the work session and regular session of April 4th, 2022.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is made and seconded. Any discussion? Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Mayor Ham,
Yes.
Councilwoman Jones,
Councilwoman Jones, District 1, yes.
Councilman Broadway,
Yes.
Councilwoman Matthews,
Yes.
Councilman Gaylor,
Yes.
Councilman Aycock.
Yes.
Motion is made and approved to approve the minutes of April 4th, 2022. Next item on the agenda is presentations, and this time City Manager will present Employee Performance Awards.
Yes, sir. It's my pleasure to present the second quarter of fiscal year 21-22 Employee Performance Awards. We had 2 employees of the quarter, and we did not have a supervisor of the quarter. So I would like to read the first employee of the quarter and then make the presentation. The first award of the second quarter has been awarded to Victoria Nelson for outstanding achievement. Victoria has been instrumental in the transition of the new lab supervisor at the water reclamation facility. She's always eager to take on new tasks and consistently find ways to increase the efficiency of current duties in order to reduce the time needed to complete required tasks. She's a true asset to the water reclamation facility. Victoria is an outstanding employee, always setting the bar higher for herself and others. Victoria's work ethic and accomplishment reflect well on herself and the city of Goldsboro. Thank you very much, Victoria. Picture here with Supervisor Ms. Mann. We have this award here. Check there. Quick photo of the room. Thank you. Okay, so we'll give you a chance to say something about your wonderful employee here, and then she can comment.
I just want to thank Victoria for all of her hard work and dedication. Being a new supervisor for the WRF, I have been challenged a lot, and Victoria has always been right there by my side. She has taken on new responsibilities and new projects without any complaints or anything. So I just appreciate her so much, and I know she's a great asset for WRF as well as the whole city of Goldsboro. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Just have to say, these folks right here are our compass at the plant. They're the ones that are telling us what's wrong, what's right, and what adjustments that we need to make. Without these guys right here, or these folks, I should say, without these, we wouldn't know what was going on at that plant site. So they are very essential to what we do out here, and they were in the transition of a lot of positions being moved around. So there's a lot of stuff that was new supervisors, new employees, and things of that nature. Victoria stepped up to help Tawanda in her position and her role, and helped us all as a unit in public utilities to do what we need to do, and that's to serve the community. Thank you so much, Victoria. We appreciate it.
Thank you. I'll just say thank you.
Thanks, guys. Okay, I've got the second one here, Mayor.
Yep.
Has been awarded to Leroy Lewis for outstanding achievement. Leroy has demonstrated competence, resourcefulness, courtesy, and has been instrumental in assisting with the transition of management of Goldsboro Event Center. His knowledge of the event center, such as where things are, how to transition from one event to another, and his customer service skills, along with how things should be run professionally, make him a true asset to the event center. Leroy ensures contracts are completed, performs walkthroughs for potential events, and ensures events are properly set up and fully staffed. Leroy is an outstanding employee, always setting the bar higher for himself and others. Leroy's work ethic and accomplishments reflect well on himself and the city of Goldsboro. Thank you, Leroy Lewis. You want to hold one side there, sir? Chair. Drop that. Appreciate it. Comments you want to make here?
Just glad to be able to do what I can for the city of Goldsboro. Being a retired police officer here with the city, and just transferring over to the event center, it really made it nice for me. I have to thank the police department, number one, for making me the man that I am. And that made me be able to work at the event center and do it the best that I can. Thank you.
call Ms. Sherry Archibald up front here.
Yes, if you don't mind, thank you. Mayor and council members, it's my pleasure to be here in front of you tonight to recognize National Volunteer Appreciation Week. Wanted to just share with you that every year the North Carolina Governor's Office and Volunteer North Carolina opens the opportunity for each county to nominate volunteers in their community to be recognized. The United Way of Wayne County was invited just a few years ago to facilitate this effort, and while it's been very challenging the last few years through COVID, we are beginning to see a way to be able to find a variety of ways to recognize our volunteers. We recognize that we could not do the many, many things in our community without them. So this week, I just wanted to invite you and the community to join us in celebrating National Volunteer Week today and tonight. We're happy to be here and appreciate the opportunity for a proclamation for us to share those that were nominated. And then also tomorrow morning we'll be at the County Commissioner's office. We'll be doing the same with a proclamation and sharing those names, presenting them all with a certificate of thanks from United Way. Also on Thursday, we will be on base and sharing that wonderful celebration with them. And then again on Saturday at the North Carolina Pickle Festival, we'll have an opportunity on the main stage to recognize those that are going to be awarded the Governor's Pin for their service too. Thank you very much.
I'm going to read a proclamation to you.
While you're coming down, if you don't mind, I'm going to name the list of names that have been that are going to be recognized on behalf of United Way of Wayne County. We appreciate the work that so many in our community do. However, many of them were nominated through this process this year, and I would like to just mention their names. The Martin family, Tanika Bassett, Mark Holbrook, Kenneth Coley, Johnny May Flowers, Isaac Carino, Evangelina Servison, Ethan Phillips, Donna Countryman, Bronwyn Assenhalfer Henson, and Brandy Matthews. So just want to say thank you to all of those. Congratulations.
There are so many hundreds of names besides these in our community that makes things happen. And we see them in nonprofits, we see them in for-profits, we see them in our churches, every place. And we could not be the city that we are without the volunteers that make us that way.
So true.
I want to read a proclamation. National Volunteer Appreciation Week proclamation. Whereas a sense of caring and a desire to share have motivated many men and women to volunteer their time and services to the needs of others in the Goldsboro community, and whereas volunteers help the sick, the needy, disabled, and enrich our lives through the arts, recreation, and cultural activities, and whereas the city of Goldsboro has many dedicated volunteers who give their time and expertise on boards and committees that benefit our citizens, and whereas volunteer action is a powerful force for the solution of problems, and volunteers are increasingly recognized as an important partner with governmental agencies, whereas volunteers have become an essential part of any prosperous community, and volunteer services help expand programs and stretch our tax dollars. Whereas Governor Roy Cooper and the Volunteer North Carolina recognizes volunteers across the state for their contributions to each 100 counties. Now, therefore, I, David Ham, Mayor of the City of Goldsboro, North Carolina, do hereby proclaim the week of April 17 through 22, 2022 as National Volunteer Appreciation Week, and urge all citizens to recognize and thank our volunteers across this country and within Goldsboro as we acknowledge the importance of our volunteers and take the time to officially thank them for all they do. That's my copy. So, give this to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mel.
Thank you.
Okay, another one, and this will be the Community College Month proclamation, and I'll ask Councilwoman Matthews to present this.
Thank you. Community College Month proclamation. Whereas the United States of America is home to more than 1,000 two-year associate degree granting institutions that serve nearly 12 million students. And whereas community colleges are a uniquely American education model designed to guarantee access to affordable, high-quality higher education for all people. And whereas community colleges guarantee fair admissions for all students, attracting the most demographically and socio-economically diverse students. And whereas without community colleges, many Americans students would not have access to higher education. And whereas North Carolina's Great 58 community colleges provide opportunities for more than 500,000 students annually, and whereas Goldsboro's own Wayne Community College, which regularly proves itself to be the best of the 58, improves the lives of students with education and training, helps businesses and industries stay current and grow, offers community members cultural experiences, and serves as a vital center of the community. All efforts designed to meet the diverse needs of the people that it serves. And whereas for every dollar that students invest in their education at Wayne Community College, they receive a return of $5.30 in higher future earnings. And whereas Wayne Community College not only contributes to the personal growth, health, and success of Goldsboro's residents, it also adds $114.2 million in income to Wayne County's economic fiscal year to 2019 through 2020. And whereas the Congress, by Senate Joint Resolution 158, created National Community College Month to recognize the institution's significant contributions to the strength, vitality, and prosperity of our nation. And now, therefore, I, David Ham, Mayor of the City of Goldsboro, North Carolina, do proclaim the month of April 2022 as Community College Month in the City of Goldsboro, and encourage all citizens to observe this month by learning about Wayne Community College myriad offerings and its value to our economy and our community. In witness whereof, I hereunto set my hand and affix the seal of the City of Goldsboro, North Carolina, this 18th day of April in 2022.
I think we have some Wayne County Community College people present here. Isn't that president?
Dr. Becker.
Yes, thank you.
Let me get out of the picture here. Oh, no.
Thank you, Dr.
You're welcome. To the mayor and to the city council, I just want to thank you. The community college is very, very important to the county and the city and the citizens that we all serve. So thank you very much for proclaiming this proclamation for Community College Month. We will most certainly meet the needs of the citizens of the city, and if there's anything you ever need for us, please reach out. We're here for you guys as well. So thank you for doing this, Mayor and City Council members. You're very welcome.
Thank you for what you do.
You're very welcome.
For your social media, would you mind? For the
Yeah,
thing that-
absolutely. Absolutely.
Pleasure for me to stand beside you.
Oh, sir, I would agree with that.
Thank you very much. Yes, ma'am. Absolutely.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, one more. This is the Fair Housing Month proclamation, and Councilman Gaylor is going to present this.
My pleasure, Mayor. Thank you. Fair Housing Month proclamation. Whereas it is illegal to discriminate in the sale or rental of housing, including against individuals seeking a mortgage or housing assistance, or in other housing-related activities. And whereas the Fair Housing Act prohibits discrimination because of race, color, national origin, religion, sex, including gender, gender identity, sexual orientation, and sexual harassment, familial status, and disability. And whereas a variety of other federal civil rights laws, including Title VII of the Civil Rights Act, Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act, and the Americans with Disabilities Act, prohibit discrimination in housing and community development programs and activities, particularly those that are assisted with U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development funding, such as the City of Goldsboro. And whereas each year Fair Housing Month is observed in April to commemorate the landmark 1968 Fair Housing Act, in which U.S. law was established that prohibited discrimination in housing. And whereas the 2022 theme for the month, Fair Housing, More Than Just Words, underscores the need to commit to and strive toward advancing equity in housing and securing equal access to housing opportunities for all. Now, therefore, I, David Ham, Mayor of the City of Goldsboro, North Carolina, do proclaim the month of April 2022 as Fair Housing Month in the City of Goldsboro, and encourage the people of Goldsboro to learn more about their rights and responsibilities under the Fair Housing Act for the benefits of themselves and of their neighbors. A witness whereof I have hereunto set my hand and affix the seal of the City of Goldsboro, North Carolina, this the 18th day of April 2022. David Ham, Mayor.
Thank you. I don't believe we have anyone here. We do? Come on up.
Mayor, would you like to?
Jeff. I'm going to move out of the picture again.
Absolutely. Go ahead. Exactly.
Hide behind this.
Okay. What's going on behind us here?
They don't want any part of it.
Exactly.
You have anything to say? Please.
That this is one of the efforts, one of the foci of the Community Relations and Development Commission, and I hope that you'll be seeing much more of us in the future. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Council.
Okay. All righty. We'll now go into a public hearing. Mr. Talton.
All righty, good evening, councilmen and women again. I have 3 public hearings before you tonight. We'll start off with the 2 special use permit requests. Mayor, if you will, when the time comes for opening up the public hearing for public comment, anybody that would like to speak for or against the request must be sworn in for the Madam Clerk. Thank you. All righty, so we'll start off with special use permit 2-22. Mr. William Wooten, the applicant. Property is located on the east side of North George Street between Holly and Vine Streets. The requested use is for outdoor storage at this present time. The applicant is requesting a special use permit for outside storage associated with an automobile towing and recovery operation to be located at 514 North George Street and within the General Business Zoning District. According to the city's Unified Development Code, in Section 554 of Special Use Specific Regulations, outdoor storage is a permitted use in the General Business Zoning District only after attainment of a special use permit approved by City Council. Again, the property is located in the General Business Zoning District. The site is currently vacant and undeveloped, as you see here within the red box. Approval criteria for outdoor storage is as follows. All outdoor storage areas shall be located in the rear and side yards. The entire storage area shall be enclosed by an 8-foot high solid fence set back from adjoining property lines as required. The height of the fence may be reduced to 6 feet if the applicant provides evidence or written confirmation to the planning director that the items proposed to be stored will not exceed 5 feet in height. Number 3, no loading or unloading of material shall occur outside of the fenced area. Number 4, material shall not be stacked to be visible from any public road right-of-way or adjoining property line. Discussion. The existing storage lot has remained vacant for over 10 years. The applicant intends to develop the lot for use as an automobile towing and recovery operation, providing a comprehensive range of services to include 24/7 emergency towing services, car and truck towing, motorcycle towing, local long-distance towing, auto wrecker services, fast accidents response, winch outs, and auto recovery services. According to the city's UDO, a special use permit is required since outdoor storage is the primary use for the site. The applicant intends to store automobiles on the property for a temporary period of time until the automobiles have been cleared for reassignment or possession by their rightful owner or designated agent. The applicant states that automobiles will not be stored for salvage or parts. Currently, the applicant is investigating on-site modular office units, which are North Carolina Building Code approved structures that will serve as the primary facility for transacting business with the general public. Site plan approval will be required before setup and building permits can be issued. The applicant intends to comply with the supplemental regulations for outdoor storage in accordance with the approval criteria of the city's Unified Development Code until a commercial office facility can be secured in the future. Access to the site will be provided by a 24-foot wide driveway cut from North George Street. The proposed use does not require additional parking for the site at this time. City water and sewer are available to serve the site. The site is not located in a special flood hazard area. No action is necessary from City Council at this time. The Planning Commission will have a recommendation for the Council's meeting on May 2nd, 2022. Does any member of the Council have any questions regarding this particular special use permit?
Any questions? Okay, this is a special hearing, this is a public hearing for special use 222 William Wooten Outdoor Storage. Anyone wishing to speak for or against this, please come forward. Anyone wishing to speak? There being no one to come to speak, we'll move to the next item. Special use 322 Gregory Sackus Retail Sales, north side of
Yes, sir.
East UI Highway 70.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor. The applicant is requesting a special use permit for retail sales to be located at 4265 East US Highway 70 and within the airport zoning district. According to the city's UDO, permitted uses and special use specific regulations, retail sales is a permitted use in the airport zoning district only after the attainment of a special use permit approved by City Council. Again, the zoning is for airport business, and it is located with Seymour Johnson's accident potential zone and noise overlay contour. The site formerly operated as Downey's Video. It is currently vacant and unoccupied. Just for future reference, the site has been closed for more than 6 months, and for that it was a non-conforming use. Any use now must meet current city development standards. According to the UDO, a special use permit is required since the proposed use of retail sales is located within the airport business zoning district. The applicant intends to sell tobacco products as well as food and miscellaneous sundries. Site plan approval will be required before building permits can be issued. Access to the site will be provided by an existing 20-foot wide driveway cut from 70 East Highway. Parking, the proposed use of retail sales requires a minimum of 8 parking spaces. Parking spaces shall be striped and shall include spaces for handicap accessibility purposes. City staff will be working with the applicant to ensure compliance with the landscape ordinance. City and water are available to serve the site, not located in a flood hazard area. Seymour Johnson Air Force Base officials have been contacted regarding the proposed use, since it is located in the accident potential zone and the noise overlay contour. Once an official response has been submitted to the city, staff will ensure compliance with their regulations. Once again, this is a special use permit. Planning Commission will have a recommendation for the council on May the 2nd.
Any comments or questions from the council? If not, this is a public hearing for special use SU 322. Anyone wishing to speak for or against, please come forward. Anyone wishing to speak for or against? If not, I'll close the public hearing on this item and we'll move to item H.
And lastly, we do have a rezoning request. This is a legislative hearing. Anybody wishing to speak for or against the request does not have to be sworn before City Council, since it is a matter of broad public opinion. So Z522 Withers Ravenel is the applicant. The property is located on the North Oak Forest Road between Central Heights Road and Gateway Drive, located primarily in the city's 1 mile ETJ. If you'll recall, at our last meeting, council approved a townhome development complex just directly west of the property, along Corbett Drive. This property is directly east of that property. As you can see, majority of it is located at this time outside of our corporate city limits. The applicant is requesting a change of zone for the subject property from residential 16 to residential conditional zoning, R6CZ, limiting the property to a multifamily development complex consisting of 312 apartments. According to the city's UDO, the proposed development shall meet the multifamily design standards of the R6 zoning district. So let's see. You'll see the property consists of approximately 25 acres. This is the comprehensive land use plan showing the industrial use for the property. But let's see. All right, that's on a slide there. All right. So, but the current zoning, let's see, of the property is residential in nature. On April 4th, 2022, the Goldsboro City Council concurred with the recommendation of the Planning Commission and adopted an ordinance changing the zoning for property directly west and adjacent to the subject property from residential R9SF, single family, to residential R6CZ, conditional zoning, limiting the use of the property to a townhome development complex consisting of 107 units. Currently, this property is vacant farmland. The land use recommendation again recommends industrial development. Discussion: the submitted preliminary site plan includes a total of 13 buildings and a total of 13 apartments. And I don't know why we don't have the site plan there. Access to the site will be directly from North Oak Forest Road south and through interconnectivity from the property directly north and adjacent to the subject property. Staff is working with the developer to determine alternatives to the proposed interconnectivity network. Parking for the site requires 2 spaces per unit for 1 and 2 bedroom apartments and 3 spaces for units over 3 bedrooms. A total number of 509 parking spaces are required. The submitted site plan shows a total of 541 parking spaces. Just if I could inject, you will have a site plan for this before you approve this development, so I want you to know that, as well as our planning commission, so I apologize for that not being on the site. Open space, a common area equal to 20% of the entire development, including rights of way, shall be preserved, maintained, and improved by the development for active recreational use by residents of the development. In addition, the required open space shall be held in common ownership for the perpetual benefit of residents of the development by a legally established corporation, association, or other legal entity, or be dedicated to the city of Goldsboro as a public park. Sidewalks, external and internal sidewalks, are required for the proposed development, utilizing handicap accessible slopes and ramps. Internal sidewalks are shown for residents of the facility. Additional sidewalks will be required along interconnecting streets for future development purposes. At this time, a commercial lighting plan has not been submitted. However, city planning will be working with the developer as if this site were to continue to be considered for future development. Engineering: the subject property is located outside the city limits. City water and sewer available to serve the property. The site will require annexation into the city limits. The property is not located in a special flood hazard area. City engineering will require approval of stormwater calculation and drainage plans prior to the issuance of any permits. Of course, landscaping will be required. A type B 15-foot wide landscape buffer is required along all property lines. All utilities shall be underground. Refuse commercial dumpsters will be utilized for garbage collection and be screened appropriately. Building elevations. Again, we do have a building elevation site that you have in your packet showing the apartments meeting the design standards of the UDO. Once again, no action is necessary. The planning commission will have a recommendation for the council's meeting on May the 2nd. Do y'all have any questions?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
This is a public hearing on rezoning 522 Withers Ravenel. Anyone wishing to speak, please come forward. State your name, please.
Good evening, Mayor Ham and members of council. My name is Brendy Vega with Withers Ravenel. My address is 137 South Wilmington Street, Raleigh, North Carolina. We are the applicant for the proposed apartments at North Oak Forest Road with the builder and developer Cabinets and Cates. The applicant has offered some conditions to go along with this rezoning, and I have provided them to Mr. Talton in case you would like to review those. We are limiting the uses to multifamily, open space, accessory structures, outdoor recreational facilities that are privately owned, not constructed in conjunction with a single-family subdivision or planned unit development. The number of dwelling units will not exceed 312. The height shall not exceed 45 feet as measured from the front elevation. Stormwater control measure access easement shall be provided with the first recorded issuance or prior to the issuance of a first certificate of occupancy. An additional access point will be added at the northern project boundary in conjunction with NCDOT transportation project U5724, which is along the northern boundary there. The attached site plan that we have submitted, and I'm sorry you don't have it here before you, but it does represent the intended uses, density, and intensity of the multifamily residential. The intention of the layout was to provide an additional buffer by putting the parking all around the perimeter and thereby having the units internal and their recreation and open space internal to that. And we did provide building elevations that are representative of the product type. We do understand that we have to go through the city of Goldsboro's design standards, and will be reviewed and approved by the planning director. We really appreciate your staff's time. They have been great to work with and have given us a lot of guidance through this process. We did talk to them about the land use plan and the zoning, which is currently zoned for residential, and this different type of residential zoning we believe is a good buffer between what will now be townhome residential and industrial uses. The density of residential will go from the single-family homes to townhomes to multifamily, followed by industrial district. While the current future land use is industrial, we do acknowledge that it was adopted in 2013 and possibly does not reflect the current land use trends of industrial space. We looked at the comprehensive plan, and although it doesn't match up with the map, it does match up with section 9 that promotes infill development for housing purposes, and this development will occupy otherwise underutilized land at an appropriate intensity for the location. The site is in proximity to commercial along North Berkeley Boulevard and US 70, and will give residents convenient access to goods and services. There is ample opportunity for shopping, banking, dining, and recreation. In particular, there's the Berkeley Mall with Sam's Club, Walmart, and the Eastgate Shopping Center. And that will allow more people to access necessities locally without creating excess traffic. I am here to answer any questions, as is the engineer, Lofty Smith, and Mr. Smith, also with Withers Ravenel, can answer any of your engineering questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any member of the council have a question?
Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak on this issue? Anyone else? If not, I'll close the public hearing on Z522 item, and these rezoning and special use will come back to the council on May 2nd at the meeting. And with that, I'll excuse the planning commission. Any members that are here with the planning commission may leave if you like. Okay. Next item on the agenda is the public hearing to ratify the actions taken regarding an agreement with Wayne County and the Wayne County Development Alliance. Mr. Salmon?
Yes, sir. The city of Goldsboro entered into an agreement with Wayne County and the Wayne County Development Alliance for the construction of a shell industrial building in Park East. The agreement was approved at the Goldsboro City Council meeting on June 5th, 2017, and was signed on June 6th, 2017. The agreement was entered into without proper notice and resolution requirements being met. As part of the agreement, the city agrees to reimburse the county $425,000 of the cost of the building. $125,000 of this contribution is recognized as fulfilling the city's of Goldsboro's commitment to the Wayne County Development Alliance for the current Impact Wayne campaign. The city also agrees that any annexation into the city limits will not be effective until 7 years after the ownership of the shell building has been transferred to a private party. Pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 158, Tax 7.1, Charlie, staff is requesting the council ratify the actions of the city council at their meeting on June 5th, 2017, and approve the agreement with the Wayne County and Wayne County Development Alliance.
Is there any questions or discussion on this item? Okay, there being none, I'll ask for a roll call to adopt the resolution.
Yeah,
Excuse me, a motion, excuse me, a motion.
We need a public hearing first. We need to open it up.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Yes, this is a public hearing, excuse me. Anyone wishing to speak for or against this motion, please come forward. Anyone wishing to speak? If not, we'll ask the motion to adopt the resolution.
So moved.
Motion has been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and second. Any further discussion? Madam Clerk, call the roll, please.
Mayor Ham,
Yes.
Councilwoman Jones,
Councilwoman Jones, yes.
Councilman Broadway,
Yes.
Councilwoman Matthews,
Yes.
Councilman Gaylor,
Yes.
Councilman Aycock.
Yes.
Motion is adopted. Thank you. We'll close the public hearing at this time. Next item is public comment period. We'll open the public comment period to anyone that wishes to speak. I want to remind you that you have 3 minutes to speak. The time will be posted on the screens here. Anyone wishing to speak, please come forward. Anyone wishing to speak? If there's no one wishing to speak, I'll close the public comment period. We'll go back to the consent agenda at this time. All items on the consent agenda, J through X, have been presented. Item K was removed for items requiring individual action. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as stated?
I make a motion that we approve the consent agenda items J and L through W.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and second.
Through
Is there any
X.
further discussion?
Through X, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
There's an X on there as well,
Yep.
sir, so he said through W.
Well, I didn't get to X yet. We didn't cover
Departmental
X
monthly
before.
reports.
Okay. I'll add, I was gonna take that as a separate item, but,
That's your choice, it's yours.
okay. So J through W, the motion was made minus X, excuse me, minus K. Motion was made, is it second? You second. Any discussion? No discussion. Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Mayor Ham,
Yes.
Councilwoman Jones,
Councilwoman Jones, yes.
Councilman Broadway,
Yes.
Councilwoman Matthews,
Yes.
Councilman Gaylor,
Yes.
Councilman Aycock.
Yes.
Now, Mr. Lawrence, I didn't want to take time up in the prior time for the departmental reports. Has everybody had an opportunity to read the departmental reports? Is there any discussion? Any questions? If not, motion to approve item X.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Motion been made and second to approve item X on the consent agenda. Madam, is there any discussion? If not, Madam
Mayor
Clerk?
Ham,
Yes.
Councilwoman Jones,
Walter Jones, yes.
Councilman Broadway,
Yes.
Councilwoman Matthews.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Gaylor,
Yes.
Councilman Aycock.
Yes.
Okay, the consent agenda items have been approved in total, except for this item K, which we will now entertain. Madam Finance Director.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. We've received a request from Wayne County for concurrence on a city-county-owned property at 209 and 213 North Georgia Avenue. The 213 North Georgia Avenue is actually 2 lots. We're talking about 3 lots here. It was obtained through tax foreclosure. The county conducted the sale under the upset bid process, NCGS 160A-269, and approved it at the April 5th, 2022 meeting. The buyer is Tawana Co. The sales price is $6,000. The bid deposit was $300, which is 5% of the purchase price. The total value of all 3 lots was a little over $11,000. At this time, we've presented resolutions to the council declaring the property surplus and authorizing city officials to execute the instruments necessary to transfer the ownership to Ms. Coe if the council so pleases, and to concur with the Wayne County request.
Is there any questions?
Okay, the reason, City Councilwoman Jones, Hiawatha Jones, the reason why I asked to take this out is because I wanted us to make sure that we went through the right process. And I understand that the county sent it for appeal on the 5th, but it was only posted April 12th. And I'm pretty sure that we probably may not have an upset bid or whatever, but I think we need to allow till the 22nd because that is the 10 days. And, you know, as you said, we are being audited, so I just wanted to make sure that we go through the process.
Ms. Jones, just to address your question, so the county has been through the upset bid process, and so they've completed all their 10-day period. So it is complete. Ms. Coe was the winning bidder out of the upset bid process, so they only give it to us once the process is complete. So it works the same way as when we do upset bid. We wait for the 10-day period to be over with before we present it to the county. So they've done likewise with us. They have completed that process, and she was the winning bidder of the upset bid process. So now it's just up to the council to say whether they concur with that.
Okay, it was my understanding that it was just posted in the News August on April 12th. Okay. So the 10 days would be April 22nd. I did, am I not correct, Attorney Ron?
Their upset bid process they have listed in their resolution ends tomorrow, April 19th.
Okay.
Is what I reviewed in their resolution.
Okay, well, when I spoke to Attorney Neal, he said that it was the 22nd.
Okay,
My
I've not spoken to
concern
Attorney
is-
Neal.
Beg your pardon?
I haven't spoken to Attorney Neal.
Well, I have. But I mean, my concern is that whenever we, sell these properties to whomever it may be, that we go through the process so that it can be seen that it was going through the process and the dates were correct. Now, if you were telling me that the 19th, which is, a couple of days, I just think it's premature. And it's up to whatever the council want to do, but I just want it be known on the record that it's premature, that's all.
And I see what you're talking about, Ms. Jones, so I'm fine with delaying this, and we can pull it off the agenda and then just bring it back at the next agenda. I did not see that. They typically don't send these to me until after they've been through the process, but I see that date that you're talking about. So I would agree with you, probably just need to pull this off and then we'll deal with it on the next round.
I make a motion, we pull it off the agenda.
Thank you.
And add it to our agenda for first meeting in May, which I think is May 2nd.
Motion's been made to remove this until May 2nd, in a second.
Second.
Motion's been made and second. Any discussion? Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Mayor Ham,
Yes.
Councilwoman Jones,
Councilwoman Jones, yes.
Councilman Broadway,
Yes.
Councilwoman Matthews,
Yes.
Councilman Gaylor,
Yes.
Councilman Acop.
Yes.
Motion's carried. The item will be put on the agenda of May 2nd. This time we'll hear from the city manager's report.
Nothing to add, sir.
Okay, we have no ceremonial documents. Mayor and city council member comments. Let's start with Councilwoman Jones. You have any further comments you would like to make?
Yes, I would. Thank you, Councilwoman Jones. I would like to say that I am thankful for the collaboration between Commissioner Antonio Williams and myself. As you know, we share districts as a commissioner, District 2 and then District 1. In regards to working with the city break-ins, I understand he has required and spoken to merchants, and so have I. And I want the community to know that we are working very hard. I spoke with Chief West about strategies, and he's looking at the different patterns of the break-ins in the city. But I would like to ask that if there's anyone out there that see these types of things, please contact the chief. We really want to cut down on all break-ins, and we are vigilant and doing what we need to do for our city to keep our city safe. That is one of the reasons why I was against giving an outside agency to vet our nonprofits, because we as council women and men are responsible for our city and positive things that go on, and looking at the negative things and clearing them up. So we are the ones that are boots on the ground and asking and checking and making sure that our areas are safe. And I would also I'm very excited about a situation on Isla Street, which I will share later, but I would like to thank all of those involved. And that's the end of my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Jones. Mr. Broadway.
No comments.
Ms. Matthews.
Thank you. So I want to go back to this nonprofit discussion that we had earlier. And one of the reasons that I want to go back to it is because I have worked alongside of some of these organizations and with these organizations. And I personally have 2 community-based organizations, one that will turn 12 years old this year, and the other one will turn 5 years old this year, with no funding and no major funding source. And a lot of it has come from donations and sponsorships, and trust me, those all matter. And in community work, when your boots on the ground, small is significant. But I just think about just how many more people my particular organizations could impact. And when I think about these 3 organizations, it is only 3 organizations that are going to get cut from an opportunity to even come before this council to share what they do and the significant impact they make in this community. Is so disheartening to me. It's very disheartening. These organizations touch our most vulnerable populations. And it's kind of hard for me to believe that when we talk about outcomes, and I only provided you 2 or 3 outcomes for each organization. There's one, the Help Center. You can go by there Monday through Thursday, I believe, maybe Monday through Friday, and they're boots on the ground. You can go and pull up websites. They're mentioned on greatnonprofits.com. And you've got volunteers who volunteer, who talk about the impact that they make and the outcomes that happen, all the projects they've done for the veterans and different things like this. We have an obligation to do what we are responsible for doing and finding out what our organizations and what our people are doing in our city. And then the outcomes that it has. It wasn't enough. One council member said he wants to see outcome, he wants to see results. He don't want to fund any pop-up organizations. And it still wasn't enough for him to support these organizations based on this 3-year minimum criteria. When some of us who do community work for real, we know that you can come in and hit the ground running on day 1. It doesn't matter about year 3. But we've got to be connected, and I really, really hope that this board reconsiders. And more importantly, I hope that those 3 nonprofits come and shake up the table a little bit. You're the subject matter experts. We need to hear from you. We do not need to implement a 3-year minimum for these particular organizations. One of these organizations not only has her organization been recognized through the state, she has been recognized for the work that she's done. If you want to know about the Vision of David, you can go to the W.A. Foster Center every Sunday, where she's there with a group of kids on her own money, on her own time, and on her own dime. Those are the people that we need to be investing in. These 3 nonprofits that got cut were the ones that was working through COVID, when some of the nonprofits on our list couldn't do their service. These organizations was boots on the ground, and that means a lot to me. I saw these people moving throughout my district and moving throughout Goldsboro, servicing those very vulnerable group of people. And we sat here and made a decision today to say, oh, well, you haven't met that 3-year criteria. Oh, well, to your outcomes. And you didn't have to say it with your mouth, but you said it with your vote today. And that bothers me. That bothers me a whole lot. And it's just seeing some messages across this table. We're the leaders and we're responsible. We all stand tall and say boldly that we want to have diversity and we want to put the priority of our citizens and what's best for them first. And we come to the table and we make decisions that's opposite of that. I don't know what it's going to take. I really, really would hope that we come to this table and we remove all biases and prejudice and really do what's best for the people. Remove all personal feelings, because I almost feel like had this not come from me, this would have passed today. And that's also very disheartening. If we're going to work together, let's work together. We should stand for what's right no matter who it is for or who is it against. Right is right. And we made a horrible choice today. And those 3 organizations, and it's only 3. It's not 13, it's 3. 3 organizations. We also agreed as a council that we would not use an outside agency to determine or control our funding. Yet, we gleaned to that very outside organization to build the criteria in which we chose today. The one that's drafted up. How fair is that? How fair did we go to the United Way to get their criteria when we said we weren't going to use them? And the reason we weren't going to use them, you guys, is because we knew that their scope would knock out and cut some of our nonprofits. We did the very thing we said we weren't going to do. That's not fair. That's not fair, and we should really strongly reconsider. And this is a ploy to Passionate Beginnings, to Warm Heart, Warm Soul Help Center, and the Vision of David. Come before this board. Let your voices be heard, because the work that you do matters. And if we've got funding to support you, we should support you. To my District 4 residents and all the residents that have called to send your encouragement and just to check on me and see how I've been doing, thank you. I appreciate that. That really, really matters to me. District 4, we have got some moving pieces happening within the district, and we've got some events that are going to be coming up in the few months. So make sure you stay plugged into the Councilwoman page. As you heard, I was nominated for the Governor's Service Award and will be at the County Commissioners meeting in the morning to be recognized in that regard. So if you can tune in to that. I hope that you all stay safe, and I hope that you have a wonderful night. Thank you.
Councilman Gaylor.
Just a brief statement. Just looking through the consent agenda, all of the different events that Chief West was talking about street closures, it's awesome. To have the layout, to be able to provide the logistics, to be able to be a city where people want to hold events and want to do things. You know, in our downtown, I think there's other parts of the city that could be utilized as well, but I just think it's absolutely amazing, and I really appreciate the work that the Goldsboro Police Department, as well as Downtown Development Office, as well as all the different volunteers that go into pulling all these different events. Parks and Rec, heavens please don't let me forget them. They go in travel and tourism, that go into recruiting and helping host these events. It's just a fantastic thing to see, and seeing probably 20 minutes of our consent agenda, just simply Chief West outlining, we've got this event, this event, this event, this event, and I really appreciate their work, and just look forward to attending a bunch of stuff.
Councilman Aycock?
No comment.
Okay, I have no comment at this time. We do have some closed session items, so I'm going to, Mr. Manager.
Yes, sir. Closed session for personnel and potential litigation.
Okay, I
Make a motion, we go into closed session for personnel and possible litigation.
Is there a second?
Second.
Madam Clerk, call roll.
Mayor Ham?
Yes.
Councilwoman Jones?
Councilwoman Jones, yes.
Councilman Broadway?
Yes.
Councilwoman Matthews?
Yes.
Councilman Gaylor?
Yes.
Councilman Aycock?
Yes.
Okay, we
Start without
closed session.
Okay, we're back into open session.
I was having a dyslexic moment reading that earlier.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, we're back in open session. Does anyone have anything else to bring before the council? If not, meeting adjourned.
At this time, ladies and gentlemen, let's give a big downtown Goldsboro welcome to Eastern NC's hottest party band. We're glad to have Liquid Pleasure at Center Street Jam.